Great Tribal Chief. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551, Call. Because the weather was about to get warmer, Shi Xiong did not continue to go south, but stayed at the station of the 2nd Division. Once attacked the Iroquois, Stone Bear was ready to follow the soldiers of the 2nd Division. After all, the position of the 2nd Division is the most critical, and it is also the closest to attacking the Iroquois. After a few days in comfort, I just drove away most of the tiredness of the winter. Early in the morning, Shi Xiong's chief of guard told Shi Xiong a piece of news. "Master Chief, a few Vasichus came outside and wanted to see you." One of them was Vasichu, who claimed to be the highest military commander of the Detroit Fortress. "Would you like to see him?" Shi Xiong was taken aback. He also couldn't figure out why the supreme military commander in Detroit wanted to visit him, but since people are here, Shi Xiong can't shut them out. In any case, the tribe has maintained a very good relationship with the British. "Let them come in." Shi Xiong only hesitated for a while before he made a decision. When Shi Xiong saw Alvin Orston, who carried the rank of colonel on his shoulders, he was very surprised by the age of Colonel Orston. This guy, who seemed to be 35 years old at most, was able to become a colonel at such a young age. This is really commendable. "You must know your old friend, Colonel James Jones, the highest military officer who was once stationed in Jamestown, but he is in his 50s. Of course, Colonel Alston was also taken aback by Ashikame's domineering size. Even if he is a European, he has never seen such a domineering and strong person. Whereas a human, this is clearly a giant bear. Especially beside the stone bear, there is a real giant bear that looks lazy. Especially when this giant bear opened his mouth and yawned at them when he saw Orston. It almost scared Orston to pee his pants. Although there are still a few people who followed Austin, only Colonel Austin was allowed to enter the big tent, and his men were left outside. Seeing this young and handsome blonde colonel was terribly scared by Tep. Shi Xiong patted Tep's head in an awe-inspiring way and said, Go outside and play by yourself. I want to talk to the distinguished guest. You not suitable here." Although Colonel Alston could not understand the words of the stone bear, he clearly saw that the giant bear got up lazily, and then really stared at himself, and then slowly walked from behind. "Get out." Of course, the unobstructed body when Tep got up also made Colonel Alston feel a palpitation again. Stone Bear stood up with a smile, walked a few steps forward, and stretched out his hand to say in fluent English, "Great Bear, Chief of the Cherokee clan, nice to meet you, my friend." Shi Xiong's fluent English with a distinctive London accent made Colonel Alston stunned for a moment, but then he stretched out his hands to hold Shi Xiong's big hand, and shook it vigorously for a few times before he laughed. Alvin Alston, the highest military officer of the Royal British Army in Detroit Fortress. As he said, the smile on Alston's face increased. "Chief, I really didn't expect you to say with such fluent English, if I close my eyes and listen to you, I will definitely think I have met a friend from my hometown." Shi Xiong laughed a lot. This little compliment was very comfortable. "Please sit down, Colonel Alston," Shi Xiong asked with one hand. "What would you like to drink? Green tea, black tea, coffee or fruit wine?" "Wow, Lord Chief, you are really rich here." Colonel Alston originally came here to please the chief, so he doesn't mind throwing his face away on this occasion. Lick the chief's ass. "Let's drink tea. I prefer black tea." Seeing Colonel Alston sitting down, Shi Xiong nodded to the captain who was standing next to him, and then the captain turned and walked out. Shi Xiong also sat on the chair opposite to Colonel Alston, with a solid wood coffee table between them. Come and taste the cigarettes of our tribe. This thing is also quite popular in your colony." Shi Xiong picked up a box of refined cigarettes from the coffee table and drew out 2 cigarettes. One of them was handed to Colonel Alston. Alston took it in a hurry. "Lord Chief, cigarettes are indeed very popular on our side, but I have never seen such delicate cigarettes." Alston gave another flattery. This kind of cigarette is not for foreign use. It is only used among the high-ranking members of our tribe, Shi Xiong said with a smile, picking up the exquisite fire folder, and shaking it in the wind. The flames burst out. Come on, click on it, and taste the taste of this cigarette. If you like it, take some back later. I don't lack these things here. The magical Tuaz once again shook Colonel Alston, but he quickly approached him and lit the cigarette in his mouth. After taking a deep breath, Colonel Alston immediately showed a satisfied look on his face. Wow, I have to say, this is the best cigarette I have ever smoked. It is mellow and not spicy. It is really top-notch. Smoke. Shi Xiong also smiled and lit his eyes. www.wuxiasput.com. After taking a sip, he asked, I don't know why Colonel Alston is here to come to me this time? Lord Chief, I have nothing else to do this time. I just listened to my subordinates saying that you are here, so I made a special visit. After all, the relationship between our British Empire and the nobles has always been very good. Now you come. It's Detroit. If I don't pay a visit, if I let my superiors know, I can't bear the big hat of disrespect for friendly nations. After the initial shock and discomfort, Colonel Alston showed his agility and demeanor as an important member of an aristocratic family. Haha, you don't have to be so polite. I have been familiar with some people in your country for so many years. I wonder if Colonel Alston recognizes Colonel James Jones, who was stationed in Jamestown. That's my old friend. But he has returned to your homeland in the UK now, and we have not seen each other for a long time. Well, Colonel Jones is my old predecessor, and he has a very good relationship with my father. I have always regarded Colonel Jones as my goal. Colonel Alston appropriately displayed a kind of humility. When was talking, the guard came over with a tray. There were 2 cups of steaming tea on it, but one cup was black tea and the other was green tea. Shi Xiong likes to drink green tea. He has no love for black tea. However, black tea is very popular among the British. So many people in the tribe are now growing black tea, and the harvest is not small when it is sold to the colony. After a cup of tea accompanied by nonsense and chatting, Colonel Alston asked the real question about coming here this time. Chapter 552, Cooperation. Dear Chief, you also know that I am now in charge of the military defense of the Detroit Fortress and the other 4 fortresses. This time I am here to ask you, your army will not do anything to my fortress, right? I had a drink. Smoking a cigarette. Colonel Alston thought he was about to have a relationship with this burly man, and then cautiously asked the question that had been held in his mind for a long time. Shi Xiong, who asked about this, was taken aback for a moment, and then burst into laughter. Alvine, this is really interesting for you to ask. In the chat just now, after Shi Xiong asked a few questions, he clarified the guy's family background and some details. Obviously, although this guy is a British Army colonel, he really has no military talents. He can climb to such a high position at such a young age, mainly because of his family. To paraphrase a buzzword from later generations, this guy is particularly rich in second generation and official second generation. It doesn't matter if you have the ability, as long as your father is good. Of course, this Colonel Alston is not without skills, but his skills are mostly embodied in business, rather than military and political. And the sentence he asked directly reflects his political and military ignorance. Seeing Alston's awkward expression, Shi Xiong continued to smile and said, "We are friends, right?" Alston took a deep breath and nodded affirmatively. "Are we Cherokee and your UK good friends?" Alston continued nodding. "Then, it ends? Since we are friends, and the relationship between my tribe and your country has been very good, why should I kill you? You didn't offend me. Besides, if I really want to kill you before the winter last year, your military fortresses might have been wiped out by my soldiers. Do you think you can still sit here with me, drinking tea and smoking? This is true. He. Alston laughed awkwardly. Shi Xiong leaned his body slightly. His face suddenly became serious. Also, with our current strength of the tribe and the relationship with your country, even if I really kill you, do you think your country will help you? Don't forget, now the riots of the colonists alone have caused your king to be devastated. Alston shivered with fright, his face turned ugly. Shi Xiong laughed loudly again. It was fun to make this guy okay. Colonel Alston now understands that people are playing with themselves. I said, Alvin, I want to ask a question about you. Shi Xiong suddenly changed the subject, but the little joke just made Colonel Alston realize that the powerful chief in front of him would not do it to himself. So, he also let go in a short period of time. Lord Chief, just ask if you have anything. As long as I know, I will tell you the truth. Well, I want to ask, now the east side is so lively, do you want to go to the east to earn military merit, or do you want to stay here and continue to engage in your family's fur trade? There was a look of hesitation on Austin's face, but he just hesitated, and then said with certainty, I think it's better for me to stay here. After all, I don't like war very much, and I don't need military merit. Come and add something to me. Austin hesitated again. It's just that, in the current situation, I can't call the shots. On the battlefield to the east, our British Empire doesn't seem to be very dominant. Ishikama happily clapped his hands and said, if you really have this idea, I can help you. Why do you help me? If I think you are a good person, I want to work with you. Well, or maybe I want to cooperate with the family behind you. Do you believe it? Austin thought for a while. Chief, do you mean cooperation in business? Yes, I just want to do business cooperation with your family, and I can guarantee that even if unexpected things happen in the future, I will guarantee your safety, and I will also guarantee that your family is in the new world, the safety of the business. After a pause, Shi Xiong continued to explain, I used to cooperate with your country through Colonel James Jones, but now that James has left the New World and returned to China, I still lack a trusted partner on your side. James himself is not strong enough, and I also want to find a partner with sufficient strength. Ishikama's words made Austin's eyes light up, and he couldn't wait to ask, Chief, do you mean you are cooperating with our family to start trade in Europe? Yes. You should know all the refined salt and cigarettes that have been popular in the past 10 years, that's my industry. The promotion of James is not very profitable. I need a more suitable partner. In addition, here there are many things that you rarely see in the European continent. I need to find a partner with sufficient strength to cooperate. Well, the Fernando family in the Kingdom of Spain has been my partner as early as 7 or 8 years ago. But I still want to find more partners. I hate French people, so I don't want to work with French people now. How about, do you think my proposal is appropriate? Of course it fits. Dear Chief, you can find our family to cooperate www.wuxiaspa.com. This is the honor of our family, and I can assure you here that if we really cooperate, our family we will use all our power to protect our cooperation. Austin's business acumen and sensitivity immediately made him offer a flattering promise again. In the past 10 years or so, the colony and the mainland, refined salt, cigarettes, edible oil and even a small amount of steel and cement from the New World are very popular things. Well, it's not enough to use the best-selling to describe it. If anyone can get these things, it will be an absolute huge profit when they sell them backhand. The Fernando family of the Kingdom of Spain, Aston also knows. He is very aware of the wealth that the family has made for cigarettes, refined salt and weapons in the Kingdom of Spain in the past few years. Now even the King of Spain has taken the Fernando family's money. The fat patriarch was regarded as a powerful right-hand man. The prestige and strength of the Fernando family are now among the top few families in the entire Spanish kingdom. But, those things that flowed out of the indigenous tribes of the New World, now only the Fernando family can get it. It seems that there is also a new nobleman engaged in textiles and textile machinery in the local area that can also get it. In addition to these two, if other people want to get these good things, they have to buy them from them. If your family can cooperate with a powerful war chief in front of you, then the strength of the Alston family will inevitably be greatly improved. And he, the third son who had never been able to compete for the title of his father's earl, immediately increased the possibility of becoming the next Earl of Alston to more than 90%! It is absolutely impossible for the family to miss this opportunity. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553, Search for Talent. Colonel Alvin Alston was really worried and full of fear when he came. But when he left, this worry and full of fear completely turned into irrepressible excitement. I just wanted to visit this powerful native Indian chief, and pray that this chief would not attack the Detroit fortress. As a result, he never expected that the extremely fierce chief not only did not have the idea of attacking the Detroit fortress, but on the contrary gave the Alston family a huge pie. Even on the way back, Colonel Alvin Alston always thought he was dreaming. Such a big pie, oh no, it should be a gold pie made of pure gold, and it hits his forehead so alive. This is simply incredible. How Alvin Alston went back with excitement. Shi Xiong wouldn't care. The reason why he said these things to the British colonel today was actually just a temporary motive. There is no doubt that when winter comes again this year, it will be when the Cherokee tribe will unify the entire North American continent. In other words, in 1776, except for the narrow strip on the west coast of the New World of North America and the area where the Inuit people live in the extreme north, the entire New World of North America, including the later southern region of Canada, will be controlled by the Cherokee. Site. Although there is more extensive land in north-central Canada, there is mostly no man's land there. Even if there are a lot of mineral resources there, it is not a good time for the current Cherokees to conquer thoroughly. Anyway, when the empire is established next year, all places in Canada and Alaska will be declared the territory of the empire. As for the 13 colonies in North America, which is the origin of the later United States, it must also be recovered. The New World of North America is the territory of our North American Indians. It is obviously impossible for you Europeans to occupy this place. Regardless of who is the final victor of this war of independence, when the War of Independence is over, the Grim Bear Army will inevitably have a final battle with the European colonists. And the result of the decisive battle is either that the European colonists defeated the Grim Bear Army, or the Grim Bear Army turned those European colonists into their own citizens or completely expelled them from the New World. There is absolutely no possibility that there will be a fourth ending. Of course, Shi Xiong never worried about the first possibility. Regardless of whether the final victor in the War of Independence was the Americans or the British, the Grim Bears had absolute certainty to defeat the victor between them. A huge empire has taken shape, and the task of conquering the world is about to be completed. Therefore, Shi Xiong must now consider how to guard the world. The development of basic people's livelihood, education, military, diplomacy, science and technology, including commercial development, are all essential factors for protecting the world. There is no need to worry about the two aspects of basic people's livelihood and military affairs. With the weapons in the hands of the Grim Bear Army, the Europeans will not be able to catch up for 50 years. But in education, technology, and commerce, when the empire was founded, it still relied on Europeans. Even Shi Xiong has to admit that the foundation of the empire is really bad. If you want to catch up and even surpass the European powers, you must obtain more talents from Europe through various methods. One of the important points is the exchange of benefits and even the unilateral payment of certain benefits. Whether it is all kinds of talents in Europe or those in the colonies, Shi Xiong needs them. Not only is talents the most important thing in the 21st century, at this time, talents are also the most important. The education of the empire can only be said to be barely literate, and it is still far from more advanced education. Therefore, more European talents are needed to help the empire develop education. Once the empire's education can keep up, then the empire will have a future. Similarly, Shi Xiong also understood that he was alive, with his own golden fingers, coupled with talents raided from Europe or the colonies. The empire's cutting-edge technology and military can always maintain the lead over the European powers. But the question is, what if you hang up? Although he is a rebirth, he does not have a lifespan of several hundred years. So no matter how you think about it, You must plan ahead and lay a solid foundation for the empire while you are still alive. Therefore, in the long-term development plan formulated by Shi Xiong, there is a task that must be completed, that is, before the end of this century, the empire must complete the 9-year compulsory education or even the 12-year compulsory education for all the people. I am 28 years old this year, and there are 24 years before the end of this century. This time is not long, but it is not short. After the empire is established, it is estimated that there will be a population of about 2 million. Once the food problem is fully resolved, the next step is to increase the population with all efforts, and then launch education for all. This requires a large number of high-level talents, and it requires the tribes to come up with some benefits to exchange with the European powers. But Shi Xiong also knows very well www.wuxiaspa.com for talents. The European powers will definitely look closely. Those in power in Europe are not fools, they naturally understand the importance of talent. Therefore, taking advantage of the current chaos during the War of Independence, Shi Xiong needs to find some agents in Europe to find various talents for himself. The Fernando family and William Hank of the Kingdom of Spain have been doing this, but they are still very close to searching for talents for the empire. Therefore, Shi Xiong intends to find a more powerful collaborator to continue to search for talents for himself. Alvin Alston just came to the door, and Stone Bear would naturally not let it go. Although William Hank is now a baron, the time for Hank's rise is still short after all. Even if he now has a huge amount of wealth, in many ways it is not you who can get things done. As a veteran British aristocracy, the Austen family is not comparable to Baron Hank except that the money is not as much as Baron Hank. And like this old noble family, their attitude towards wealth tends to be more greedy. It's very simple. An old nobleman, his personal connections must have been very large and deep, and to maintain such a deep network, more wealth is needed. Therefore, whether it was before, now or in the future, the older aristocratic families are, the more greedy for wealth. Then, as long as they can bring more wealth to the Alston family, in terms of the strength of the Alston family, they are destined to bring more talents to the empire. This is what Shi Xiong needs and value most at the moment. Chapter 554, Total Attack. As for those Americans, or those colonists who came from Europe, Shi Xiong's ideas can be retained as much as possible. If a powerful empire wants to prosper, there is one most basic quality that cannot be lost, that is, it has a broad mind and can tolerate the existence of more different nations. In other words, a country with only one or two nations can never be strong forever, and those countries that can accommodate more nations and exist in harmony at the same time will inevitably become a powerful country. This has already been confirmed in later generations. Those powerful countries in later generations, whether it is China, Laozi or the United States, are all multi-ethnic countries coexisting. These countries are extremely strong. Similar to those small countries in Africa, there are not many ethnic groups in each country. What is the result? There are also those countries in the Middle East, which are even more difficult to deal with. Therefore, no matter who can win the independence war in the end, Shi Xiong does not intend to let these Europeans who remain in the New World of North America go. In fact, despite the fact that the population of European colonists in the New World of North America has surpassed that of Indians, most of these colonists were farmers and handicraftsmen who could not mix in Europe. They were a group of out-and-out suffering haha. These people's requirements for life are actually very simple. As long as they can eat and feed their family, they will not rebel easily. This independence war has actually been confirmed. If the British government didn't survive these bitter squeezes, who would have eaten and support themselves to create a British reaction? And if the British government is not so cruel to the 13 colonies, they will not lose the entire North American New World. Therefore, it is not so difficult to subdue these Europeans. Give them enough jobs, let them have enough land to cultivate, and reduce the tax burden on them. These people will not rebel. Besides, even if they have other ideas, they have to be implemented. Are you really a display of the Grim Bear Army? Political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. Shi Xiong never dared to forget the words of Tai Zui. Once these colonists can truly return to their hearts, then the talents among these colonists will inevitably be used by the empire. After Alvin Alston left, Shi Xiong kept thinking about these things, until the chief of the guard called him to eat, and Shi Xiong ended his thinking regarding how the empire should develop rapidly after it is established. This is a huge and long-term plan, and Shi Xiong also knows that he cannot perfect this huge plan in a short time. Furthermore, the plan always cannot keep up with the rapid changes. Therefore, no matter how perfect the plan is, it needs to be temporarily changed according to the actual situation. After letting go of this idea for a while, Shi Xiong devoted all his energy to the upcoming battle in the following days. The Great Lakes region is located at a high latitude. The freezing starts at the end of December and the beginning of January each year, and the thawing begins at the end of March and the beginning of April. It is now mid-March. Although the ground is still snowy, according to reports from hot air balloon observers, it is now like Lake Erie at the south of the latitude, and the center of the lake has begun to thaw. While the Detroit River and the Street Clair River had not thawed, the 8 regiments of the 2nd Division crossed the Street Clair Channel and began final preparations for the Iroquois general attack. The 2nd Division will stay 2 regiments near Detroit. These 2 regiments were not to watch the British, but to ensure that the 2nd Division's backpath would not be cut off. This is what must be done in a war. After half a month, the snow on the ground has almost melted, and Shi Xiong issued a command for the general attack through the radio. From Sault Ste. Marie in the north to Cleveland in the south, after deducting the remaining troops, the 4 divisions of the Grim Bear Army launched an attack on the Iroquois in the east along 3 lines with a total of 30,000 people. The 1st Division on the northern line had the heaviest task, because the 1st Division had to attack east along the northern shore of Lake Huron, the farthest, and would encounter the Hurons along the way. Therefore, the number of Grim Bears attacking the northern line is the largest. The 7 regiments of the 1st Division and the 7th Division will form the North Route Army. The middle road is the shortest distance between the 8 regiments of the 2nd Division and the 3 regiments of the 7th Division, with a total of 11,000 people, but the Middle Road Army is the first unit to contact the Iroquois, so the mission of the Middle Road Army is not light. As for the South Route Army, which is the mixed 8th Division stationed in Cleveland, after 1 regiment is left behind, the remaining 9 regiments will attack eastward along the south bank of Lake Erie. The main task of the mixed 8th Division is to contain the Iroquois in the south. Of course, if the Iroquois pulls the main force to the south, then the mixed 8th Division does not mind giving the Iroquois main force a cruel. After 4 or 5 years of development, the equipment of the 10 divisions of the Grim Bear Army is actually the same. There is basically no difference in hard power, the weaker is soft power. For example, combat experience, fighter's will and so on. If the Iroquois really think that mixing the 8th Division is good for bullying, then the 9 regiments of the 8th Division can definitely teach the Iroquois a profound lesson. At that time, more than 2,000 people in the Expeditionary Army were able to defeat the main force of more than 20,000 Creeks led by the Bighorn Sheep. www.wuxiaspot.com. Now the strength is far superior to that of the mixed 8th Division of the Expeditionary Army. The main force of the Iroquois is still effortless. Although the Iroquois are now the most powerful tribe in the northeastern part of the New World, their population is about 100,000. Their overall strength is not much different from that of the Creek people. 8 divisions. Although the snow has almost melted, the speed of the 2nd Division's advance is not very fast. After all, the muddy road caused by snowmelt is still more difficult to walk. The 300-kilometer journey from Detroit to the later Hamilton, the 2nd Division took a full 10 days. Part of the reason is that the road is difficult to follow, and the other reason is that there are continuous small-scale battles along the way. The Iroquois adopted the tactics of harassment, but this kind of tactics that are unprofitable against other tribes, when faced with the 2nd Division with an overwhelming weaponry advantage, completely turned into a tactic of fueling. The die-hard Iroquois obviously did not want to just raise the white flag. They sent a total of 2,000 to 3,000 soldiers to harass the 2nd Division along the way. As a result, more than 1,000 people were killed by the 2nd Division alone. There are also more than 1,000 people. Along the way, the hands of the soldiers of the 2nd Division can be said to be covered with Iroquois blood. But when the 2nd Division arrived in Hamilton, good news came from the Northern Army. The Hurons raised the white flag without any resistance. Chapter 555, Golden Waterway cut off. As the commander of the 1st Division, Kuima was also the highest commander of the Northern Route Army. He sent the news that the Hurons raised the white flag. However, due to the limited distance of radio communication nowadays, what Kuima said in the wireless telegram was not very detailed, but only the general process. In fact, Shi Xiong can guess the Hurons' choice even if he doesn't talk about it. In fact, the Hurons have no choice at all, otherwise, the Huron chief would not send his brother over to make peace. The area where the Huron people originally lived is pretty good. Although the climatic conditions along the St. Lawrence River are not good, they are definitely much stronger than on the Lake Huron shore. Unfortunately, the Hurons who have lived there for generations were driven to the west by the Iroquois. The Hurons also want to find a good place to continue to survive, but there are powerful Crees in the north, and the same powerful Chippewas in the west, and the relationship between the Hurons and the Chippewas is pretty good. They can't go occupy the place of the Chippewa people. Besides, because of their strength, they can't beat them even if they want to occupy the place where the Paiva people. There are the Great Lakes to the south. Even if it is to the south of the Great Lakes, there are Ottawa and Erie people. They are also allies. Even if they continue to move northward at the risk of being attacked by the Cree, it is impossible. The Hurons do not live in the Arctic for generations like the Inuit. They have a hand in how to withstand the severe cold and how to find prey in the cold tundra. If the Hurons continue to go north, the cold weather will be enough to exterminate their race. Therefore, the Hurons can only be trapped on the north shore of Lake Huron. The average night temperature here is below zero for 8 months of the year. Even in summer, the temperature here is not very high. The key is that the summer is very short, and the time for hunting is also very short. As for planting, you can only plant one season a year. Therefore, among the Indian tribes along the Great Lakes, the Hurons belong to the kind of status where grandma does not care for uncles, and it is very embarrassing. Now the Cherokees, who are so powerful that people feel terrified, are fighting over. The Hurons have nowhere to run or hide. Their only choice is to surrender or fight to death. Obviously, Chief Balzac knew his strength too well. Fighting to the death with the powerful Grim Bear army, they don't even have the qualifications. If they dare to fight to the death, then the egg hitting the stone is their only end. Since the Cherokees can't fight to the death, and the Cherokees do not accept their peace, then the Hurons actually have the only option left, unconditional surrender. Just a 1st Division can easily crush the entire Huron clan. Shi Xiong has no doubt about this. Therefore, the Hurons are seeing the soldiers of the 1st Division coming over, and they have no way to go except surrender. Of course, the Hurons surrendered unconditionally. This is undoubtedly good news. After all, the Hurons are also a tribe with a population of more than 50,000. If they can win this tribe without blood, Shi Xiong has always responded with a welcome attitude. And this kind of tribe that directly and unconditionally surrendered, merged together exceptionally smoothly in the future. Just like the Pueblos, Osages, Choctaws, and Navajos in the past, the process of integration went smoothly. Because once they surrendered unconditionally, they actually passed that level involuntarily psychologically. This good news also made Shi Xiong order the Central Route Army to rest for a day and celebrate at the same time. More than 10 days of marching made the soldiers tired, and the engineer battalion in front also needed to build a pontoon bridge over the Niagara River. Because the location to cross the Niagara River is on the upper reaches of the Niagara River, which is the mouth of Lake Erie, the straight line distance from where to Hamilton is less than 100 kilometers. So the soldiers will not delay the offensive for a day off. After all, along the way, the soldiers of the 2nd Division and the 7th Division have completely frightened the Iroquois who were harassing them. It has been 3 days since I saw the harassed Iroquois. It is estimated that by this time the Iroquois had gathered all the main forces and prepared for a real decisive battle with the grizzly soldiers somewhere. For the Iroquois' choice, Shi Xiong didn't care at all, regardless of whether it is the 2nd Division or the mixed 8th Division in the south, as long as they arrive at the designated location. There are only 2 endings for the Iroquois. One is to surrender after being beaten and collapsed, and the other is to surrender unconditionally. But Shi Xiong estimated that the Iroquois would choose the former 90% of the time. After all, the Iroquois have been rampant in this area for hundreds of years, and they have never lost here. Even though the Iroquois were involved in the 7 Years' War 20 years ago, they also wisely chose to stand on the side of the British, and they won again. This kind of tribe that has not tasted the taste of failure for hundreds of years can easily develop arrogance and even arrogant pride. Therefore, they are very hard now. Even if they hit the south wall, they probably won't look back easily, but will continue to try to crash the south wall with their heads. Partial Stone Bear now likes to treat all kinds of head irons. After a day of repairing on the front line of Hamilton, the army continued to advance east. 2 days later, the army gathered on the west bank of the Niagara River. However, Stone Bear did not follow the army to the Niagara River. www.wuxiaspa.com. He and Joe Laklelu, who rushed over, were investigating the army's position about 20 kilometers away from the Niagara River. If Stone Bear is now the president of the Cherokee, then Laklelu is equivalent to the prime minister of the Cherokee. Benefiting from his outstanding contributions to the internal affairs of the past few years, Shi Xiong is relieved to hand over the internal affairs of the tribe to him. Laklelu is also the 3rd in name of the entire Cherokee tribe, second only to Stone Bear and Cabru High Priest. But the power he now holds is the recognized second in command in the tribe. Now, under the protection of hundreds of guards, Stone Bear and Laklelu are standing next to a natural river near the later Street Catharines. Jorakrelu, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, you will see the big waterfall on the Niagara River. Without that big waterfall, the natural course of the Niagara River would become a golden waterway, but because of that big waterfall, with the existence of the waterfall, this golden waterway was forcibly cut off, and ships could not navigate between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Therefore, we must find a way to bypass the waterfall and find a new waterway to connect the 2 lakes. Connected so that we can take a boat from Shangjing to the east to the Atlantic Ocean in the east. Joe Laklelu looked down at the map in his hand and said, "Boss, what you mean is that we have to build an artificial canal here just like you said before to build an artificial canal near Chicago." Shi Xiong nodded, looked up at this natural river not far away, and exhaled a white breath. Chapter 556, Artificial Canal Project. In future generations, the 10,000-ton ship from Europe or the 10,000-ton ship from Duluth, the westernmost point of Lake Superior, can freely enter and exit the Great Lakes through the famous St. Lawrence Waterway. The so-called St. Lawrence Waterway refers to the general term for the artificial waterway system of the Great Lakes in North America and the St. Lawrence River. This golden waterway runs west from the mouth of the St. Lawrence River to Duluth, the westernmost point of Lake Superior, with a total length of 3,800 kilometers. The contribution made by this golden waterway is absolutely important for the United States to rise so quickly and become the world's largest country. But now, as Shi Xiong said just now, neither the British, the French nor the ships of other European powers can directly enter the 4 large lakes west of Lake Erie from the Atlantic Ocean. Warships or other ships can only between Lake Ontario and the Atlantic Ocean. The reason why this is the case now is because of the existence of the famous Niagara Falls. The altitude of Lake Erie is 99 meters higher than Lake Ontario, and the length of the Niagara River that connects the 2 lakes is 56 kilometers. Compared with the 56-kilometer river course, the 100-meter drop, if it is gentle, the average of the Niagara River is about 1/81,000ths. Although this is not small, it is still acceptable. Inside The problem is that in the middle of the Niagara River, there is an insurmountable Niagara Falls. This famous waterfall, one of the 3 largest waterfalls in the world, became a huge guillotine in the middle section of the Niagara River, severely cutting off the river, and at the same time the entire St. Lawrence Channel. Although Niagara Falls is beautiful and magnificent, future generations will attract tens of millions of people to watch it every year, but as far as shipping is concerned, this waterfall is an out-and-out demon. Everyone knows how important it is to open the entire St. Lawrence waterway, and if the interval between the Chicago River and the Illinois River is more than 10 kilometers, then the boat from the Atlantic Ocean can really directly reach Shanging and even the Mississippi River. New Orleans at the southern end. In the original historical time and space, after the founding of the United States, it took decades to excavate the Erie Canal to the east of the Niagara River, then dug a Welland Canal from the west of the Niagara River, and then dug a Chicago. The canal eventually connected the Mississippi River with the Great Lakes, forming a huge shipping system covering 2/3 of the United States. Even when the Stone Bear crossed, this waterway system is still the most important inland waterway system in the United States. Others don't know the importance of this shipping system, so how could Shi Xiong not know? It is no exaggeration to say that even in later generations, the importance of this shipping system is not inferior to that of the American highway system. We must know that from the establishment of the nation to the end of World War I, the reason why the United States was able to rapidly grow into the world's largest country was because of this huge waterway system. Therefore, Shi Xiong will not let go of this channel system anyway. Of course, in terms of the current strength of the Cherokee tribe, if they want to dig through the 584-kilometer Erie Canal, they are still unable to do so. But if you just dig through the land between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, which is only less than 50 kilometers long, then the problem is not big. After all, the Chicago Canal from Chicago to the Illinois River was ready for excavation before the winter of last year. The Iroquois are destined to be defeated by the violent bears. The entire Great Lakes region eastward to the Atlantic coast is also destined to become the territory of the Cherokee tribe. So now we are ready to excavate the artificial canal between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and put it on the table this morning. Boss, do you mean that we first use this natural river channel and then dig south? Kiao La Krielu asked in a low voice while recording the Stone Bear's words. Yes, this river runs from here all the way north to Lake Ontario. The length is about 15 kilometers. We only need to widen and deepen the river, then this section of the river can be used. This will save us about 1/3 of the resources and labor. Also look at this. Shi Xiong pointed to the large wasteland in front of him. Did you see the low line here? Joe Lakleel removed the charcoal pen in his hand from the notebook, looked up at the wasteland in front of him, nodded and said, "It seems that there is a lot of depression here than other places." Shi Xiong smiled. This is indeed a depression. If we use this depression to dig south, once we dig through Lake Erie, when the water of Lake Erie arrives here along the river we dug, it will be here. A huge artificial lake is formed. This artificial lake can not only store water, but also adjust the water level, which is conducive to the navigation of ships. Hereafter, there are indeed 2 connected artificial lakes. To the east is the larger Gibson Lake, and to the west is the smaller Moody Lake. In fact, the Welland Canal of later generations used this natural waterway from the beginning. It's just that as the ships get bigger and bigger, this natural waterway is no longer suitable. So an artificial canal deep enough and wide enough was dug from the east side of Gibson Lake to the north. Later Americans dug through the Welland Canal with a total length of 44 kilometers. www.wuxiaspa.com. At first, more than 40 wooden locks were used to adjust the water level. However, the maintenance cost of wooden locks is very high. With the continuous development of technology, there are finally 8 reinforced concrete locks left on this canal. The of the Welland Canal is not small. It's good to say that it goes down the river, but if it goes up the current, the boat is really hard to go, so this canal must also build a lock. But that's not Shi Xiong's business. He only needs to provide a general plan and excavation route, and the rest will naturally be handled by someone below. In the past few years, Through the hands of the Fernando family and William Hank, the Cherokee family has been digging talents from Europe. In addition to 18 arhats, there are more than 200 talents from Europe. These people can't mix in Europe, and they have real talents themselves, so they were abducted to the New World of North America by the Fernando family or Baron Hank. But these people have been reluctant to go to Beijing now. Shi Xiong attaches great importance to these people. If they have any needs, as long as the tribe can provide them, they will inevitably rush them first. In Shangjing, these people who are about to starve to death in Europe, now they can eat well, dress well, sleep well, and have all kinds of food, cigarettes, drinks and even women, so they don't want to leave Shangjing. With these talents, the scientific research strength of the entire tribe has been greatly improved. The excavation of an artificial canal was presided over by 2 talents from Europe. Chapter 557, Thor water, building roads, repairing embankments, pulling wheat, well, driving tractors. These are the 4 major fatigues recognized by later generations. There is no tractor, so naturally there is no way to drive it, but whether it's building roads, repairing embankments, or pulling wheat, the Cherokee tribe has already begun to expand. It goes without saying that this is related to the issue of food. It is something that every tribe attaches great importance to, and it is also an annual event for the entire tribe. Similarly, road construction is also a tribal project, the kind of project that involves the power of the entire tribe. For example, the road from Shangjing to Monongahela to the Dakingshan base, and the road from Shangjing to the southwest, northwest, and southeast are all unquestionably big projects of the tribe. Now, Shi Xiong has begun to put the repair, that is, digging the canal, on the table again, which is also the top priority of the tribe. It's just that digging a canal can be a little bit backward compared to building roads. At the very least, the 2 artificial canals that are about to be dug will have to wait until May to start. Joe Laklilu left the relevant surveying personnel, and followed the Stone Bear and the Red Cloud who came here with him all the way to the Niagara Falls. It's so beautiful, it's magnificent. Standing here, I just think I'm so small. Han Yun standing on the west bank of the waterfall was fascinated, staring at this magnificent waterfall and muttering to himself, naturally, I can't hear it, the roar here is too loud. Do you know, in our ancestors' heritage, there is a legend of Niagara Falls a long time ago. Unfortunately, we have only seen this waterfall until now. However, now we see this waterfall. That means we have returned to our ancestral land. It is not far from our ancestral land, Han Yun said excitedly. As the high priest of Kabru, she naturally knows the heritage of many tribes. She also knew about the heritage news of this great waterfall. In fact, before the Cherokees were driven out of the Great Lakes, the Cherokees lived near Niagara Falls. The name Niagara actually comes from the Iroquois language, which means water of Thor. Because the huge roar of this waterfall appears to the Iroquois or Cherokees, it is the of thunder in the sky speaking. Niagara Falls is divided into 2 parts because of the division of Ram Island. The largest waterfall on the south side of Gongyang Island is called the Horseshoe Falls because of its horseshoe shape. At the same time, because this waterfall is located in Later Canada, this section of the waterfall is also called the Canadian Falls. The waterfall north of Gongyang Island is also called American Falls because later generations are located in the United States. It is worth mentioning that in the American Falls, because a small island called Moon Island is separated from Ram Island by less than 20 meters, the American Falls is divided into a separate small waterfall less than 20 meters wide. It is called Bridal Veil Falls. Niagara Falls is recognized as the world's largest waterfall in later generations. If you come during the high water season, this waterfall is shocking and not to be avoided. But it is not yet the wet season, and there are even some ice layers on the banks of the Niagara River, so the waterfall at this time is not the most spectacular time. But even so, everyone who saw this great waterfall was overwhelmed by the majesty of this waterfall. Stone Bear has never seen Niagara Falls with his own eyes in his previous life, He has only seen it in pictures. The effect that can be seen from the picture is far less than 1/10,000th of what you have seen with your own eyes. Therefore, even the stone bear was stunned by this magical world. Although it is a dry season at this time, there is no hydropower station at this time. In order to make use of the huge hydropower resources of the Niagara River, 70% of the water in Niagara Falls is used to generate electricity. Less than 1/3 of the water flows through the waterfall. But even then, Niagara Falls is still very spectacular. And now, there is no power station, and all the water flowing from the Niagara River will pass through these two waterfalls that are divided into two by Ram Island. Therefore, even in the dry season, the water flow of this great waterfall does not have to be the time difference in the later flood season. Thousands of cubic meters of water fell from a cliff over 50 meters high in 1 second, and the scene was spectacular. Without seeing it with my own eyes, it is really hard to imagine that there is such a magnificent scenery in this world. Several of the top big figures of the Cherokee people stayed on the west bank of the Great Falls for a long time, and finally left here reluctantly. After all, this big waterfall was regarded as a tribal holy place long ago. Of course, it is not only the Cherokee people who enshrine this place as a holy place, but the Iroquois and Erie people also enshrine it as a holy place. Just as Hong Yun said before, once here, he has entered the core area of the ancestral land. If it weren't for the noise here, it would be too much for people's ears to stand for a long time. It is estimated that Hong Yun and the others would like to live here for a lifetime. But even if I stayed for most of the afternoon, when I was far away from the waterfall, everyone's ears were still roaring. The so-called magic sound infusion is nothing more than this. Joe LaCruz finally understood why his boss asked him to dig a canal in the west. Niagara Falls is magnificent, but it will also make all shippers feel desperate. Such a moat is simply insurmountable. It is precisely because of seeing this great waterfall with my own eyes www.wuxiaspa.com and feeling the fierceness of this great waterfall, Kara Klelu pays more attention to the excavation of the Western Canal. These things, Shi Xiong won't worry about them. After leaving the Great Falls, the group walked south along the west bank of the Niagara River. It took a day to reach the mouth of the upper reaches of the Niagara River. Compared to the violent section of the middle and lower reaches of the Niagara River, the upper reaches of this river are undoubtedly much gentler. The 600 to 700 meter wide river is connected to Lake Erie in the south. If you don't look closely, you can't even see the river flowing. Later generations, on the east bank of this location, there will be a big city Buffalo, also called Buffalo. Buffalo is a large city that belongs to the United States. And on the west bank of the river, there is a small city of Fort Erie that belongs to Canada. On the course of the Niagara River between Fort Erie and Buffalo, there is a famous bridge called the Peace Bridge. This bridge is also a famous border bridge between the United States and Canada in later generations. Now, there is no Buffalo, and there is no Peace Bridge. What is there is just a fur trading post established by the French with a history of less than 20 years. Of course, this trading post has now also been taken over by the British. At this time, the Engineer Battalion of the 2nd Division of the Grim Bear Army has erected a pontoon bridge here. Although it has not been completely completed, the soldiers of the 2nd Division of the Grim Bear Army can cross Niagara through this pontoon bridge at most 2 days later. The river finally entered the ancestral land of the Cherokees. Chapter 558. Nowhere to escape. Both banks of the Niagara River originally belonged to the Iroquois, but now no Iroquois can be seen here. Especially near the mouth of the upper reaches of the Niagara River, the Stone Bears also saw a large gathering place. It used to be the site of an Iroquois tribe, but now it is empty. There are many long houses in this tribe, which is not much different from the long houses inhabited by the Gaoshu tribe or even the Cherokee. The relationship between Cherokee and Iroquois can be seen from these long houses. Even if the two tribes were separated by thousands of miles before, they are actually a family. It's a pity that the family that was supposed to be in love with each other had to meet each other in battle. In this regard, Shi Xiong is also very helpless. On the one hand, In order to ensure the inheritance of the orthodox bloodline, some side branches had to be driven out of the ancestral land, and the other was to fight desperately to return to the ancestral land. It's hard to tell who is right and who is wrong. If you want to complain, you can only blame good luck. Hong Yun also saw the large and small empty tribes. At this time, she followed the stone bear on the east bank of the wide mouth of the upper Niagara River, looked at the land on the opposite side, and said with emotion, "Dalijiang, the other side is our tribe, our ancestral land. Our tribe has been living in this area before we were kicked out of here," said. She turned her head, looked at the stone bear very seriously and asked, "Dalijiang, will you lead our people back to our ancestral land?" Shi Xiong also said seriously, "This is a must. We have prepared for so many years, and we have laid such a large site. Isn't it just to return to the ancestral land with honor? I think our ancestors would also like us to bring nothing. The glory of heaven returns to the ancestral land, and they will watch us return to the ancestral land from the sky. Those Iroquois are scared, right? They even gave up the tribe here," Hong Yun asked lightly, but Shi Xiong could hear the excitement hidden in her tone. "Yes, the Iroquois are scared, so they have lost the qualification to occupy this place again, and we will completely replace them as the masters here. Here, it is destined to become our territory, and who will be in the future, I can't take it away." Shi Xiong's tone was full of affirmation. "However, if we want to completely occupy this place, we still need to fight a tough battle. If I am not wrong, the Iroquois should have all gathered at this time, waiting for the final battle with us. We can definitely win, right?" Although Hong Yun already knew the answer, her face still showed expectation. Stone Bear smiled and nodded. "Of course, our tribe has the most powerful Grim Bear army in the world. Those Iroquois are not our opponents. The Grim Bear soldiers will surely be able to overthrow them easily. Will they run away?" Hong Yun seemed to be interested. Before, she seldom paid attention to military matters. Shi Xiong shook his head and looked across the river. "No, they won't run away, and they have nowhere to escape. They can only fight us now." After a pause, Shi Xiong pointed to the northeast and said, "Now, the 1st Division of Kuwema has conquered the Hurons, and their cavalry units have quickly marched to the north bank of the St. Lawrence River. Even the number of these cavalry units there are only a few thousand people, but these brave warriors have completely cut off the possibility of the Iroquois fleeing north. No matter how many Iroquois, they cannot face the blockade of the cavalry unit with many grenadiers. Forcibly crossed the St. Lawrence River. To the north, they had no way out." Stone Bear's fingers pointed to the southwest again. "On the south side of Lake Erie, our 8th Mixed Division has arrived at the predetermined position, which completely cuts off the possibility of the Iroquois fleeing south." "What about the east?" Hong Yun asked. "Iroquois can run east. Don't they always stand by the British?" "No, they won't run east, because there is no condition for them to survive in the east," Shi Xiong said with certainty. "Why don't they run eastward?" Hong Yun didn't know much about strategic matters. The bighorn sheep who had been standing behind the two took 2 steps forward, stood beside Hong Yun, and then coughed in a low voice and said, "Respected High Priest Kabru, the reason why the chief chose to do this at this time, the northern expedition, especially the current attack on the Iroquois, is mainly because those Vasicas have already made a real fire when they hit themselves. Now in the east, the British and their colonists are fighting fiercely. I'm overwhelmed by myself. Who can manage the Iroquois? The most important thing is that there are a lot of Iroquois. If they run east now, the British and the colonists have a great possibility. Sex will turn its gun to the Iroquois. If that happens, the Iroquois will also have no chance of survival." Shi Xiong saw the puzzled look on Hong Yun's face, and he smiled and explained, "If the Iroquois ran east 10 years ago, there would still be a chance to survive. But now it doesn't work anymore. Because during the 7 Years' War, the Iroquois stood firmly on the side of the British and helped the British defeat the French. However, when the British Civil War broke out, the 6 members of the Iroquois League were formed. Of these tribes, 2 of them have rebelled, and these 2 tribes are on the side of the colonists, although the remaining 4 tribes of the Iroquois Alliance are still on the side of the British. Whether they are British or those colonialists at this time, they are all very vigilant towards the Iroquois. They don't know who the Iroquois is going to help in the East, so they will definitely do something to the Iroquois. www.wuxiaspa.com East, there is no chance for the Iroquois to survive. After the explanation, Hong Yun has completely understood what happened over the past year, and she has also understood the embarrassing situation facing the Iroquois. The fact is, just as Stone Bear said, the 5 tribes of Mohawk, Onondaga, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca that formed the Iroquois alliance, plus the 5 tribes that joined the Iroquois 60 years ago, the Tuscarora of the alliance. A total of 6 tribes form the current Iroquois alliance. Among them, the Mohawks are the core and big brother of the Iroquois. During the 7 Years' War, the 6 tribes resolutely stood on the side of the British, and the British defeated the French. However, when the War of Independence broke out, the 6 tribes split. The 4 tribes headed by the Mohawks still stood on the side of the British, but the other 2 tribes were fooled by the Americans and stood on the side of the Americans. Therefore, both Americans and British people are very wary of the Iroquois, because they don't know where the Iroquois will truly stand. At the critical moment when the 2 sides are in a stalemate, which side the Iroquois joins will gain an overwhelming advantage. So under this circumstance, neither the British nor the Americans will allow accidents to happen. Once the Iroquois dared to enter the eastern battlefield, the British and Americans would absolutely not mind turning their guns to kill the Iroquois first, lest they come to disrupt the situation. So, the Iroquois really has nowhere to escape. Chapter 559, Ancestral Land. In fact, just as Stone Bear judged, the Iroquois did not escape. When the pontoon bridge was completed, some of the soldiers of the 2nd Division and the 7th Mixed Division crossed the Niagara River proudly and advanced eastward for about 30 kilometers, and saw a large number of Iroquois fighters. Although the current Iroquois League is still the top tribe in the entire North American continent, its strength is far from its peak. In fact, even if there is no Stone Bear's chaos to change the current form of the New World in North America, the Iroquois will be driven away by the Americans in 3 years. When the War of Independence broke out last year, the Iroquois tried to remain neutral at first, but they couldn't stand the flicker of the British and Americans. The originally united tribe split. Later, in 1779, the founding father of the United States, Washington, sent 3 columns to infiltrate the Iroquois territory, set fire to more than 40 Iroquois tribes, and finally put the Iroquois on fire, driven out from their ancestral land. The Iroquois, who had nowhere to go, finally suffered from the split. They had to flee north to Canada to avoid the Americans. Later, he was driven to the Ohio Valley by the British. In short, this once extremely powerful tribal alliance is now at sunset. However, Shi Xiong's chaotic entry has changed everything. At least the Iroquois alliance, which should now stand on the side of the Americans and the British, has been split for a while, but under the strong pressure of the Grim Bear Army, these 6 tribes are reunited and prepared to deal with the Grim Bear Army. The 6 major clans of the Iroquois alliance plus some small clans are enough to form an army of more than 30,000. In addition, they still have a large number of matchlocks in their hands. This is the strength of the Iroquois alliance. At present, the area of the core site controlled by the Iroquois is still not small. The west starts from the later Erie, and the east can reach the vicinity of Syracuse, the entire southern shore of Lake Ontario and half of the southern shore of Lake Erie belong to the core site of the Roques. As for the seat of the Iroquois Royal Court, that is, the core area of the Mohawk, it is approximately near Rochester in later generations. However, the large number of Iroquois fighters assembled in front of the Grim Bear Army are obviously the main force of the Iroquois, but they did not protect their royal court, but laid them about 70 kilometers west of their royal court, the line of defense. There is our former ancestral land. Behind those Iroquois warriors is our Cherokee ancestral land. Hong Yun was in a rare gaffe. She stood on a small hill and pointed excitedly, said from a distant place. Not only her, more than a dozen priests around her, as well as the once tribal high priest, and now the tribe's great witch, Dr. Bakalazut, are equally excited and almost out of breath. Obviously, these priests who know the history of the tribe best, recognize the land behind the Iroquois fighters. Don't even think of Shi Xiong as the chief, but he is a person who became a chief halfway through, so he doesn't know the situation of the Cherokee ancestors, let alone the situation of the ancestral land. Let alone stone bears. It is estimated that the entire tribe has no knowledge of the ancestral land except for a few sacrifices. After all, before the appearance of the stone bear, the people who recorded the important events of the tribe were all completed by the tribe's high priest or other sacrifices. These sacrifices are the true inheritors of a tribe. Even if these sacrifices can only use knots, slate and wood paintings to record the great events that happened in the tribe, they are also inheritance. Shi Xiong looked curiously at the excited Hong Yun and Bakarzu, and waited until they gradually recovered calm before asking, "Priest Kabru, can you be sure that the place far away is where our ancestral land was?" "There is definitely our ancestral land, I can be sure of this." Hong Yun took a deep breath, and still replied with some excitement. "I keep a lot of knots and slate paintings, some of which are dedicated to recording the ancestral land. These knots and slate paintings are all preserved by every high priest of Kabru." Hong Yun looked at the stone bear very much said seriously. Shi Xiong also nodded. He had seen the items in the Red Cloud room with his own eyes, although he didn't understand what was recorded in the ropes with knots of different sizes. Shi Xiong knew that they were definitely very precious things. The North American Indians without writing used knots and slate and wood paintings to record important events that happened to their ancestors and tribes. Our ancestors said that our ancestral land was in a flat land surrounded by semicircular mountains. There are two rivers on both sides of the ancestral land. The two rivers will eventually converge in the valley north of the ancestral land, and eventually go north. It flows into the Great Lake. And one day, walking from the ancestral land to the land of Thor, right west, you can reach the water of Thor. Great Bear, look, is the terrain of the place in front the same as the ancestors recorded? We just came from Thor's water and it was exactly one day, so this must be our ancestral land. Shi Xiong nodded silently. Hong Yun is right. Although standing on this hill can't see the real landscape of the area, head www.wuxiaspot.com. The hill that is more than 200 meters higher than other places is indeed half. The circle envelops a flat piece of land, and under the sun, the light reflected by the two rivers can also be vaguely seen. The most important thing is it just today's time to walk from Niagara Falls to here? Niagara Falls means water of Thor in Iroquois. In Iroquois, the land of Thor represents the west, and the origin of the land of Thor is the Niagara Falls. The stone bear shook his head fiercely, and said to the black wolf standing next to him, "I will prepare a hot air balloon right away. I want to go to the sky with the high priest Kabru and the great witch, Dr. Bakarutz. I want to make sure this is our ancestral land." The black wolf saluted excitedly, turned around and ran off the small mountain bag. After a while, the black wolf's roar sounded below. Shi Xiong and Kuema personally picked up the sliding poles, and Bakalazut, who was almost immobile, sat on the sliding poles. Hong Yun followed by his side, and the four quickly walked down the hill. After half an hour, Bakarazu and Hong Yun, who were covered in thick fur, took the hot air balloon under the leadership of Shi Xiong, and then Shi Xiong personally shook the hand-cranked air dryer, and the hot air balloon began to slowly rise into the sky. The huge hot air balloon caused some commotion among the Iroquois a few kilometers away, but it quickly subsided. Shi Xiong and the others didn't care about this, but stared at the land that was getting clearer and clearer because of the rising altitude. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560. Danluda Wang. Today is a southerly wind, which should be very warm. But at this time, at the height of 300 to 400 meters, the warm wind also became icy cold. But no matter whether the stone bear, the red cloud or the Bakarzu, they don't seem to feel the biting cold wind at all. The old Bakarzu, who is almost immobile, insists on standing in the hot air balloon basket, his hands dead, grasping the hanging basket fence stubbornly, poking his head to look at that piece of land in the distance. When the hot air balloon rose to about 350 meters, the stone bear waved a small flag below, and the rope that fixed the hot air balloon was immediately fixed by the soldiers below, and the hot air balloon stopped rising. At this height, one can clearly see the land a few kilometers away, not to mention that the three Shi Xiong's each have a high magnification telescope that has just been developed on their necks. This type of telescope is comparable to the type of telescope that Stone Bear seized from Colonel Armand, France. It is not a star or a half, regardless of its clarity or viewing distance. This newly developed military telescope can surpass the type of telescope previously captured. The telescope is as far as the Atlantic Ocean. It's just that the excited Hong Yun and Bakalazu have forgotten that there is still a far-sighted artifact hanging on their necks. Both of them are holding the handrails of the hanging basket, and desperately looking in that direction. If the stone bear is not behind, pulling these two, maybe they will have to fall out of the hanging basket. Finally, under the reminder of Shi Xiong, the high priest and the great witch doctor took up their telescopes angrily. They watched for a long time, and they looked very greedy, and the stone bear standing by could see it. Although I can't understand their feelings, Shi Xiong's heart is quite excited at this time. There is an old Chinese saying in ancient China that wealth and nobles do not return to their hometowns, like walking in brocade clothes at night. The current Cherokee tribe can be said to be famous throughout the New World of North America. Even the tribes of the European powers who have met their own tribes have to respect and confess. No one dares to put their scores in front of the Cherokee tribe. It is no exaggeration to say that the current Cherokee people have achieved real richness. But what's the use of wealth? It would be a pity if the Cherokee scenery was not displayed in front of the fellow villagers. So, now the tribe is here, back to the ancestral land where they lived hundreds of years ago. In some respects, this can also be understood as returning to the hometown. And the most important thing is that the Cherokee was driven away by the Iroquois like a dog, which is equivalent to being driven out of the house by the fellow. Now that once bereaved dog has returned to the ancestral land with the supreme glory and incomparable power, and it has scared the people who bullied itself to tremble. This kind of scene feels very touching just thinking about it. There is an old Chinese saying in China called 30 years in Hedong and 30 years in Hexi, and now it's almost 300 years since the Cherokee people were driven out of their ancestral land. Does this count as 300 years in the east of the river, 300 years in the west of the river? Anyway, the ancestral land is close at hand, and it is me who led the tribe that had been wandering outside for 300 years to return to the ancestral land. Therefore, Shi Xiong is also very proud at this time. Hong Yun and Bakalazu began to communicate. The two seemed to be talking about some of the inheritance they had in their hands, and then to see if they could match against the fierce south wind. A man, a woman, an old and a young. Two people communicated for a long time, and there was a dispute between them. But in the end, both of them said to Shi Xiong with tears, "Chief, the land in front is the ancestral land of our tribe. It is the former royal court of our tribe." Bakalazu even choked up and said, "Chief, you must take it down there, and you must promise me. If you don't promise me, I won't close my eyes in death." This is too heavy to say, but Shi Xiong can understand the old man's feelings. So, after getting off the hot air balloon, the stone bear prepared to mobilize the whole army, and then took down the land in front. For this reason, Ishikama even prepared to kill all the Iroquois fighters. The divisional artillery regiments of the 2nd Division and the mixed 7th Division began to build positions. Hundreds of 55 mortars and hundreds of 76 mortars also began to find positions. As for the other fighters, they were all gearing up. Shi Xiong could see that all the soldiers were holding a fire in their hearts, a fire that could burn any enemy to death. If anyone dared to stand in front to prevent these soldiers from regaining their ancestral land, they would definitely not hesitate to tear the enemy into pieces with their weapons. And the 8th Mixed Division, which was ordered by radio, also began to push unreasonably on the southern line. The command that Shi Xiong gave them is very simple: gather to the 2nd Division as quickly as possible. Therefore, as soon as the 8th Mixed Division received this order, the division's artillery regiment gave the over 3,000 Iroquois fighters blocking the front. No one cares about how many Iroquois killed. The soldiers of the 8th Division are to merge with the 2nd Division in the first place. Perhaps the ordinary soldiers of the mixed 8th Division still cannot understand the feelings of their chief, but most of the officers in the mixed 8th Division are Cherokee. They are hearing that their chief is preparing to regain the ancestral land. At that time, one by one was even more anxious and crazy than the bison that lit its tail. From the later Erie to Buffalo, the distance of about 120 kilometers, the 2nd Division actually arrived in a day and a half. Then they didn't even bother to rest. I'm reading www.hukenshu.com. Directly marched quickly again, moving on to the northeast, and at midnight, the 8th Division and soldiers of the 8th Division joined the 2nd Division. At this time, Stone Bear remembered about the ancestral land of the Cherokee tribe. The location of the ancestral land actually overlaps with the location of the later town of Lockport. In the original historical time and space, the Erie Canal would also pass through this small city. Most of the soldiers of the 2nd Division, the mixed 7th Division, and the mixed 8th Division were concentrated in front of the ancestral land, waiting for the final attack. And the soldiers of the 1st Division and part of the mixed 7th Division and part of the Guards, after receiving the order of the Stone Bear, they immediately crossed the St. Lawrence River, and then proceeded quickly to the southwest along the shore of Lake Ontario. They must not be able to catch up with the battle to regain the ancestral land, but they can form a solid blockade behind the Iroquois to prevent the Iroquois rushing over the wall from fleeing east and south. It can be said that in the 3 days between the decision to recover the ancestral land and the launch of the general offensive, the 4 divisions of the Grim Bear Army have laid nets around the Iroquois, and the Iroquois did not even want to run. However, just when Shi Xiong was about to make the final mobilization and started to launch a general offensive that morning, the Guards reported a very strange news. Lord Chief, there are several Iroquois on the opposite side. One of them should be their chief, and they asked to have an interview with you. Chapter 561. Iroquois Conditions. Shi Xiong looked at the guy wearing a 7-color feather headdress in front of him, and asked angrily, "It's this time, what are you doing? And, you should not be the chief of the Mohawk clan?" There is a huge difference between the dress of the guy on the other side and the Stone Bear, which is mainly due to the clothing materials. The Stone Bear is now wearing cotton clothes instead of animal skins. The guy in front of him is wearing natural fur. It looks like it should be the whole skins of a brown bear. However, the headdresses worn by the two people are exactly the same. From this we can also see how close the relationship between the two tribes has been. Ishikame's tone is very bad, but the guy opposite is not angry. He smiled and said, "I can see the legendary chieftain of the Son of God, and I, Yoda Seneca, can be regarded as an eye-opener." "Yoda Seneca? You are the chief of the Seneca clan?" Stone Bear still has no good expressions to this guy. "Yes, I am the chief of the Seneca tribe." The Iroquois alliance consists of 6 powerful tribes. The Seneca tribe is the second tribe in the alliance after the Mohawk tribe. The suffixes of their chiefs' names all carry the 3 words Seneca, and there are no more than 5 people in this tribe who can carry this suffix in their names. "Why are you here? Don't you know that today is the day when your alliance completely disappears? Do you want to beg for mercy at this time?" Shi Xiong squinted at Yoda Seneca. "Well, if you surrender unconditionally at this time, I promise to keep you alive, and I will treat all of the Iroquois kindly." Yoda Seneca smiled again when he heard this. The legend says that the chief of the Son of God takes care of those who voluntarily submit, and it seems that way now. HMPH. Not only to take care of those who take the initiative to submit, even the tribes that we smashed down, except for the first villains, I also take care of the other tribes. Whether it is Sioux, Chippewa or Nawajo people, I'm very good to their people. Of course, when I defeat all of your fighters today, I will treat them as my people as Iroquois. Chief, Son of God, I'm very curious why you did this. Are all the claims made to you in the legends true? Do you think all the people living on this land are compatriots, whether he is a Sioux or Chippewa people? Shi Xiong shook his head and waved his hand and said, if you can survive today, I will find a chance to tell you what I think in the future, but not now. My soldiers are all set up and ready to regain us. So, Chief Yoda Seneca, if you just want to talk to me about these useless things, then you'd better go back and prepare. Talking, Shi Xiong patted Huofan's big head, and Huofan turned around and left here. The place where Stone Bear and Yoda Seneca met was outside the camp of the Grim Bear Army, to be precise, in the middle of the battlefield between the Grim Bear Army and the Iroquois Army near the side of the Grim Bear Army camp. The fault is that Yoda Seneca did this, showing a fearless aura, and Shi Xiong came out to meet him. Otherwise, if it was on the side close to the Iroquois, Shi Xiong promised one arrow shot this guy first. Before meeting this guy, Shi Xiong thought that this guy had proposed to meet him at this time, and the purpose was nothing more than one, to make peace. The problem is that Shi Xiong doesn't want to make peace at all. Why? The grizzly soldiers are all in place, and the Iroquois has nowhere to escape. As long as he gave an order, a whole 3 divisional artillery regiments plus a few hundred mortars would definitely be able to level all the Iroquois fighters in front of them in just a few minutes. Now the warriors in the rear are waiting for the command of his chieftain. If you accept the Cherokee's peace at this time, not only will the Stone Bear not do it himself, but the gang of bears in the Grim Bear Army will definitely not do it. Now, the Chief Yoda Seneca is not telling the truth and talking round the corners. Shi Xiong is really annoying. So, he turned his head and left. Chief Son of God, don't you want to hear what I want to say to you? Yoda Seneca's voice sounded behind him. Shi Xiong squeezed the reins slightly, and said without turning his head, do you still want to make peace with me? Don't you just want to make peace with me? I'm sorry, I won't accept peace at all. I only accept it. You surrender unconditionally, or surrender after being beaten and collapsed by us. No, Chief, Son of God, you guessed wrong. Yoda Seneca's words made Shi Xiong slightly startled. Although you are the chief of the Cherokee tribe, although the Cherokee tribe was a side branch of the Iroquois long ago, you have left the Iroquois for too long. You have forgotten us Iroquois. I have never been willing to bow my head down. Shi Xiong patted Huofan's head. Huofan turned around again. Shi Xiong looked at Yoda Seneca and said, it's not just you Iroquois who never bowed down. Wichilo has always held his head up and his chest high. Chief Yoda Seneca, go ahead, tell your true purpose. There is no need to talk about these nonsense between us now. Okay, since the Chief of the Son of God said so, let me state our conditions. Yoda Seneca still had a smile on his face, but the words in his mouth were cold. You, Cherokee, want to regain your ancestral land. This is your wish, and you have been acting for this goal. We Iroquois cannot stop your thoughts, nor can you stop your actions, but what I want to tell you is that your ancestral land used to be our Iroquois land. You came to our land and wanted to take back your ancestral land. Have you ever asked us? Is there any difference between asking you and not asking you? Shi Xiong twitched his mouth in disdain. Of course it matters. Don't forget, you are on our territory now. Does that matter? Do you agree to disagree what to do with us? If you don't allow us to regain our ancestral land, then we will fight. And you agree. There is nothing to discuss. Whoever has the biggest fist has the final say. After a pause, Shi Xiong said faintly, back when you drove us away with the Delawares, we were still weak and unable to resist you. We could only be driven away. www.wuxiaspot.com. Now, we are stronger, extremely powerful, so we will naturally come back to take back the land that belongs to us. So, if you don't surrender, then wait for our anger, said Shi Xiong, who didn't want to waste any more spitting stars, took the reins, and had to turn around and leave again, but he didn't want to hear a word from behind that made Shi Xiong frown. Chief of the Son of God, the ancestral land of every tribe is sacred and not desecrated. The ancestral land cannot tolerate a trace of dirt. Are you not willing to kill more people? Come on, tomorrow this time, we Iroquois will choose 1,000 of the strongest and fierce fighters. These 1,000 fighters will represent our entire Iroquois. They do not use guns or any firearms. They will stand with the most traditional weapons of the Iroquois. There, if you kill them with muskets and artillery, then we won't resist, because we know it's useless to resist. But in front of your ancestors, if you win in this way, it will only give you our ancestral land ashamed. So there is no need to leave the stained ancestral land. Our people will burn it there in the back. But if you defeat this 1,000 of us with the same number of weapons and the same weapons warrior, then your ancestral land will not be ashamed of this. Our people will take the initiative to leave your ancestral land and submit to you. Similarly, if we win, we will still return your ancestral land, but we must leave a way out for all Iroquois, and we will take the initiative to move away. This is our condition. P.S. Bo. Thank you for the reward of continuous assault steamed Abalone 500, Chapter 562, Intelligence Chief. Damn guy, even use this trick to deal with us, these stinky shameless guys. Bone Spear spit in a low voice in the Big Camp's mobile commanding account. I have been in contact with Shi Xiong for a long time, and almost all the high-level tribes have learned some words that inadvertently popped out of Shi Xiong's mouth, including cursing words. For example, smelly shameless guy. Of course, when you say this, you are often very upset or angry. Obviously, Bone Spear, a warmonger who looks low-key but in his bones is an out-and-out warmonger, is very upset now. It is as if you had pointed a gun at the enemy's head before, and you only need to pull the trigger, solve the enemy, and as a result, just before you pull the trigger, the enemy suddenly pulls your closest son or daughter to his head. This kind of situation where the original control of the field suddenly became threatened by others is indeed uncomfortable, and it is also very aggrieved. Bone Spear, Yoda Seneca is right. Our ancestral land cannot be stained. At least we can't be stained with any stains in our hands. This is our bottom line, and it's so open. Yoda Seneca's lost move should be the one that Yoda Seneca came up with. This guy is the most insidious and cunning in the entire Iroquois League. This, because I have collected a lot of information about this guy. I have already proved it. Now, Rabbit Mouth, who had just rushed over last night, said coldly, standing behind Shi Xiong. Because of the hair lips, he never accepted anyone in the Gaoshu tribe when he was a child, and even his parents didn't like him. Later, the survivors of the Shaggy Cattle tribe came to the Gaoshu tribe. The Stone Bear did not look down on the Rabbit's Mouth, and often took this guy with the natural hair lips to eat, drink and play. So this little guy who is 4 years younger than the Stone Bear has been since then. He became Shi Xiong's hardest brother. Later, after Stone Bear became the chief of the Cherokee tribe, in addition to expanding the Grim Bear army, he also began to form a guard and intelligence department. Although Shi Xiong has never been a leader in his previous life and this life, he has never eaten pork and has seen pigs run. Shi Xiong knows very well that in order to consolidate the power in his hands, he must first completely control the army, and at least the most powerful force in the army must be controlled by himself. Therefore, Shi Xiong's best brother, Koima, became the 1st Division commander with the strongest combat effectiveness of the Grim Bear army, while the 2nd, 3rd and 4th Division commanders as the main force, as well as middle and low-level officers, were similarly it is the Cherokee tribe who Shi Xiong trusts most. In addition to controlling the military power, Shi Xiong must also form his own guards. Therefore, Shi Xiong's other little brother and Hard Bones became the commander of the guards formed later. Of course, Shi Xiong will not forget the importance of intelligence. The person in power in any country in ancient and modern Chinese and foreign history must have his own eyes and ears, so that he can control everything. As the highest authority, Shi Xiong must also have an intelligence department that is completely loyal to him. Therefore, the Rabbit Mouth that has grown up has become the boss of this intelligence department. Originally, the Stone Bear intended to let the Bobcat be the boss of the intelligence department, but the Bobcat did not like to do this kind of work in the dark. The old and strong Bobcat prefers to be a scout, and is at the forefront of the army to explore the battlefield for the soldiers' first-hand intelligence. So Shi Xiong made Rabbit Mouth the boss of this secret department, and he was only responsible to Shi Xiong. Not to mention, the Rabbit Mouth in this seat is much better than Shi Xiong imagined. Maybe because I suffered all kinds of white eyes and not being seen when I was young, so the psychology of the rabbit's mouth may be a bit problematic. When he was young, he hadn't shown this problem, but when he got older, this guy became more and more cold. But, perhaps it is this cold personality that makes the rabbit's mouth especially suitable for intelligence. Anyway, in recent years, the intelligence department for the development of rabbit mouth has become more and more perfect, and more information has been obtained. Moreover, this intelligence department is not only internally, but also very good externally. It has collected a lot of useful information for Shi Xiong, and it is very much used by Shi Xiong. This time he attacked the Iroquois, and Rabbit Mouth rushed over from Shangjin after taking care of the matter at hand. Although this guy is an intelligence chief, he also hopes to witness the Grim Bear Army's feat of regaining the ancestral land. So at such an important meeting today, he is bound to appear, and after he appeared, many of the secrets of the Iroquois were no longer secrets. As early as a few years ago, when preparing for the northern expedition, the Tribal Intelligence Department headed by Rabbit Mouth began to collect intelligence on the various tribes in the north and even the colonists of the European powers. Obviously, the intelligence collection work in the past few years has not been in vain. A lot of unknown news about Yoda Seneca was revealed in one mouth. Yoda Seneca can now be said to be the military division of the entire Iroquois alliance. Well, it's worth mentioning that during the 7 years of war between Britain and France, the Iroquois had friendship with the French at the time, but at that time Yoda Seneca, who had just taken the seat of the chief of the Seneca tribe, repeatedly insisted on standing on the side of the British, so the Iroquois talent finally won the victory together with the British. From this we can see that the guy is not only cunning, but also has a strategic vision. This time, it is not surprising that he came up with such a stigmatizing trick. Rabbit Mouth continued to say some very secret news. www.wuxiaspot.com. These people present, they are all high-ranking members of the tribe and the people his boss Shi Xiong trusts most. There is no need to hide these news from them. Boss, we don't have to agree to the conditions put forward by the Iroquois. We now have an absolute advantage. As long as we launch the general offensive, we are confident that we will kill all the Iroquois in a short time. Big Spear stood up and said. Big Spear is also a veteran from the Gaoshu tribe. He was just a middle-level officer of the Grim Bear Army before, but when the Mixed Division was formed, he became the commander of the Mixed 7th Division. This time he led a part of the soldiers from the Mixed 7th Division to attack from the center along with the 2nd Division. The words of the Big Spear made all the high-level military leaders nodded, and the warmongers began to communicate in a low voice. Obviously, in the eyes of the military, killing the enemy is the most correct thing, and they support Dejiao's argument. However, Hong Yun stood up. As the high priest of Kabru, she was on the same level as Shi Xiong in name. She stood up, and suddenly fell silent in the big tent. Big Bear, we can't let the ancestral land get any stains. I know it is difficult, but that is our ancestral land after all. Although we can easily defeat the Iroquois, but in case, Hong Yun showed a look of horror on his face, if they really set fire to our ancestral land, then all of us here today will all become sinners of the tribe. Hong Yun's words made the big account quieter. Chapter 563, Shuddering Smile. There is a classic saying in the philosophy of later generations: things often have two sides. China's ancestors also have many common sayings in this regard, such as the ruler has its shortcomings and its strengths. This is actually the case with the tyrannical grizzlies. Swept across the entire North American New World, even the European powers did not dare to touch the bare butt of the Grim Bear Army. In terms of combat effectiveness is indeed a blast. But it was for this reason that the Iroquois was terrified. The Iroquois can occupy the northeast of the New World for a long time and become the most powerful tribal alliance in this area. They are naturally not fools. On the contrary, they are very shrewd. Although the Native Americans are depressed and backward, it does not mean that they are nothing. Understood, fool. Obviously, the Iroquois have long known that the Cherokees will target themselves, and although the Iroquois can be the king and hegemony in the local area, they have a clear heart. With their strength, They are in the grizzly army, in front of him. Even a praying mantis blocking a car is worse than. The Iroquois knew very well that if the Cherokees were allowed to fight over, then their tribe's only fate would be to be swept mercilessly like the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Alaina. But by the way, the Iroquois didn't want to fail so easily, so there was such a nasty tactic. This is a shortcoming that the Grim Bear Army showed when it was at its strongest. In front of the ancestral land, even if the Grim Bear Army has mushroom bombs in his hands, he still has to throw a rat restraint. If the Grim Bear Army is an extremely strong, fierce, powerful warrior armed to the teeth, then the Iroquois is undoubtedly a weak and defenseless woman. However, this weak woman accurately grasped the soldier's lifeblood and did not let go. Stone Bear can even imagine the Iroquois yelling proudly, "There, come on, hurt each other." But there is no way for the partial Stone Bear. The high-ranking military officers and the commanding account saw their boss's depressed look, and they were afraid to show up. Only Tep, a conscientious fellow, opened his mouth and yawned a few times before lying lazily at Shi Xiong's feet again, looking indifferent. Although this guy did not hibernate because of the abundant food and warm living environment, he is always lazy this winter. Shi Xiong depressedly stretched out his big hand and slapped the bear's head a few times, causing Tep to grin and want to scare his father. In fact, Shi Xiong was really depressed. If he followed his thoughts, Fu would only agree to this condition put forward by the Iroquois. Lao Tzu came through with the soul, and Lao Tzu has never seen any ancestral land before. Naturally, Lao Tzu cannot be as full of respect and affection for the ancestral land as Hong Yun and Bakarzu. What Lao Tzu wants is nothing more than to build an extremely powerful empire exclusively owned by Indians, and Lao Tzu to be the founding emperor. As for the others, none of them are important. Shi Xiong also understands what the ancestral land means to the entire tribe. If it weren't for being dubbed a tribal sinner and making the name of the founding emperor tainted, Shi Xiong wanted to order this morning to directly punish the Iroquois. A little Iroquois dare to pretend to be wild in front of Lao Tzu? He simply doesn't know how to write the dead word. But now Hong Yun stood up and said those words, and Bakalazut, who was too old to walk, and some other high-level priests and witch doctors were also obviously supporting Hong Yun. This Stone Bear had to treat it with caution. But looking at those brothers who were also silent, Shi Xiong knew it was time for him to take a few words. Bakalazu, great witch doctor, you were also the high priest of the tribe before, so do you think the Iroquois did it right? Shi Xiong chuckled his mouth a few times before he asked. The wrinkled Bakarzu raised his head to look at his chief, and slowly shook his head. This is not right or wrong. The key is that our ancestral land is now in the hands of the Iroquois. Once we really set fire to our ancestral land, it's too late to say anything. Hong Yun interrupted and said, Chief, the ancestral land cannot be burned in front of us. If that happens, not only will we all become sinners of the tribe, but even our tribe will become a tribe without an ancestral land. That will. It was laughed at by everyone. Ishikama frowned and nodded. Hong Yun used to call herself Great Bear, but now she has even said the word chief, which proves that she is really anxious now and hopes she will not be impulsive. After licking his teeth, Shi Xiong looked at Bone Spear. Bone Spear, you used to be the leader of the 4 guardian tribes of the royal court. You should be aware that Yoda Seneca said in the morning that it was carried out with the most traditional weapons. What does it mean to fight, right? Don't even think of Shi Xiong as the chief. He really doesn't know these things. Bone Spear nodded and said, Boss, Yoda Seneca means very clearly, that is, we each have 1,000 people to fight with wooden sticks, stone knives, stone axes, bone spears or bows and arrows. Anyway, as long as it is not Vasical, we can use all the firearms we use. After a pause, Bone Spear explained, the guns and artillery used by the Vasiches are foreign weapons, not the traditional weapons of our tribe. Shi Xiong raised his eyebrows. You mean that our steel knives, iron bows, throwing axes, and iron spears should also be considered traditional weapons? Bone Spear hesitated, but nodded with certainty. Forget it. After all, although these weapons have different materials, they still belong to the category of cold weapons, not hot weapons. We use our own weapons, which is not a violation. Tradition, that's good. Shi Xiong patted the armrest of the seat suddenly. www.wuxiaspa.com made a loud noise. Sepp looked up at his father dissatisfiedly, then chuckled his mouth twice and got down again. Tonight, 1,000 soldiers will be selected from the guerrillas, and the 7th Mixed Division will prepare the wooden shields, steel knives, bows and arrows, iron spears, and throwing axes. I need 1,000 steel knives and 1 axe, 1,000-faced wooden shield, 1 soldier to participate in the battle. I also need 2,000 throwing axes and 2 hands. In addition, I need 600 strong bows and corresponding arrows. Among these 1,000 people, 600 are good at archery, archer of China. In addition, I need 400 iron spears. I need 400 of the 1,000 warriors who can throw iron spears farthest. After a pause, Stone Bear looked at everyone in the big tent, and said in a deep voice, "Tomorrow, I will personally lead these 1,000 warriors to kill the Iroquois. Didn't they threaten us with our ancestral land? I will use the most traditional method to completely defeat them." Shi Xiong said this. Almost all of them objected in unison. "Chief, you can't go to the battlefield yourself. Your objection is invalid." Shi Xiong stood up. "I am the chief, and I am the one who made the final decision. Don't forget, I brought you to our ancestral land. Now we have encountered these circumstances. I have the responsibility to solve this problem. Well, you don't need to say anything. I know what I'm doing. You just need to surround me with the Iroquois, and none of them are allowed to run out. In the end, I will personally have a nice kiss with their 6 chiefs." The corners of Shi Xiong's mouth turned up, and he pulled out a chilling smile. Chapter 564, Palpitations. There are 2 mountains more than 200 meters high in the northeast and northwest of the ancestral land of the Cherokee tribe. These 2 mountains are not high, but they stand out in such a flat place. In the southeast and southwest, there are 2 rivers. The 2 rivers and the 2 mountains form a diamond that is not very standard. This piece of land of about 14 or 5 square kilometers surrounded by mountains and rivers is the ancestral land of the Cherokee people. Only now, this land is full of Iroquois, and on a flat wasteland about 2 or 3 kilometers west of the ancestral land, 2 groups of men with cold weapons are facing each other. On one side were the soldiers of the 1,000 grizzlies, and on the other were the soldiers selected by the Iroquois. The Stone Bear rides on the back of the Fire Phoenix wearing a traditional animal skin suit, standing alone at the forefront of the 1,000 Grumpy Bear army. And beside him, there was a lazy Tep. That scene can be described in one sentence: a thief in the chaotic grass, with 2 mines in his waist. Shi Xiong didn't have 2 mines pinned to his waist, but he had 2 throwing axes pinned to his waist. He carried the long unused bow on his back, and Huofeng had a quiver on his back. There are more than a dozen huge iron arrows in full bloom. Well, there are a few strong men behind Shi Xiong. In addition to the weapons in their hands, they each carry a huge quiver, which is filled with iron arrows used by Shi Xiong's longbow. The weather today is very good. There is no wind, the sun is high, and the sky is clear. To say that in this early spring season, this is definitely a good day for outing, but here, the atmosphere is tense. Shi Xiong pulled his chest open, revealing the bear head tattoos that looked up and roared, and a sturdy breath suddenly descended. The Stone Bear grabbed the big horn in one hand and raised the other Iroquois, pointing at the opposite Iroquois, laughing and cursing. "I am the chief bear of the Cherokee tribe. Where are your chiefs? Let them come out." "I didn't see a lousy. Are you all standing in the forefront? Why, your chief is so bloodless. Don't you dare to stand in the forefront." "I bah. Is this the chief in particular? Is this still a man? Let your chief stand up. I have to pick 6. Dare you? Just stand up and say something if you have an egg in your crotch." "Ha ha. Dare not, a bunch of bullies. If you don't dare to fight one at a time, you are not worthy of being a chief. Just go home and hide in your mother-in-law's arms and have milk." Every time the Stone Bear said a word, the violent bear army man behind him laughed loudly for a while. The Iroquois on the opposite side were said to have blue and white faces, but they couldn't refute it. That amazingly big man holds a big horn in his hand. That thing can amplify the sound several times, even if it is a few hundred meters away. He can hear him clearly. On my own side, I wanted to refute. If I could not go out even 100 meters, I was blown away by the wind. The most important thing is that people are right. Looking at the chief, he dared to stand alone in front of all the fighters, and dared to face 1,000 opponents alone without changing his face. This is what a boss should do. And where's your boss? Shrunk behind and dare not show up. Even if you stand up and say something, although the big man opposite looks terrifying, what can you do to stand up and say something? Can that guy kill you a few hundred meters away? This is almost a common idea in the minds of these thousands of Iroquois fighters on the expedition. There is no harm without contrast. This contrast immediately brought the morale of the Iroquois fighters to a trough. The chief of the family stood alone in the middle of the battlefield, more than 200 meters away from their fighters, and only 300 to 400 meters away from his side. The chief of the family was not afraid at all. If he was scared, he wouldn't stand in that position. It was really in the middle of the battlefield. Some Iroquois fighters couldn't help turning their heads to look behind them. They all understand what their destiny is today, whether they are dead or alive. For this, they are already mentally prepared. But the question is, Lao Tzu has already put life and death out of the question, and you 6 chiefs have not come out to boost morale for the brothers. Let's see what the big chief across from the house did. Seeing that the morale of one side has dropped significantly, 6 horseback figures finally appeared in the camp behind the Iroquois. Seeing these 6 figures appeared, there was a burst of cheers among the Iroquois fighters. Obviously, the chiefs who formed the 6 major clans of the Iroquois alliance appeared at the same time. Ghost knows what these 6 people think. Maybe they don't want to come forward. Maybe they just want to use these 1,000 carefully selected dead men to fight. Regardless of the outcome, as long as the 6 of them do not appear on the battlefield, the 6 of them can guarantee the minimum personal safety. But it's a pity that the big chief on the opposite side only activated the crowd-mocking tactic, and immediately pushed the 6 chiefs onto the wall. These 6 chiefs are not fools. They know very well that at this critical moment, if they still can't show up, then the outcome of this battle has been determined. The Iroquois have absolutely no hope of winning. Although morale cannot be seen nor touched, this thing is too useful on the battlefield. Therefore, the 6 chiefs had to show up for the morale of their fighters. In addition, the distance between the two sides is indeed a bit far. The 6 of them felt that even if the Cherokee made a surprise attack, they would be able to rush back to their camp before the Cherokee could catch up to them. www.wuxiaspot.com 6 The chief, dressed in full costume, rode a war horse to the front of the 1,000 Iroquois fighters, talking loudly, and the Iroquois fighters suddenly burst into cheers. Obviously, the attempts of the 6 chiefs were not in vain, and they recovered the originally low morale. It may be that this is indeed quite exciting, not only can improve morale, but also show their fearlessness in front of all the clansmen. So after the 6 chiefs finished speaking, they rode forward for a while, stopped at a distance of about 300 meters from the stone bear. The 6 people rode on horsebacks in different postures. Some seemed to indicate that we were also fearless, and some seemed to be humiliating the Cherokee on the opposite side. Anyway, these 6 chiefs proved with their physical movements, they really are not afraid of death. The reason why the 6 of them did this is definitely because they believed that the Cherokee couldn't kill them with cold weapons at a distance of more than 300 meters. So they dared to act hard at this distance. It's just that they never know what a big bug the big man opposite them is, and this big man once shot and killed a chief of Yukai and 7 tribe leaders with a big outrageous bow on his back at a distance of more than 400 meters. So, when they saw that the big man on the opposite side suddenly threw away the big horn in his hand, and then took the ridiculously big bow from his back with his backhand, the 6 of them suddenly felt that there was something they couldn't tell. Palpitations. Chapter 565, Continuous Shooting. The vicinity of the Cherokee ancestral land is also the kind of beautiful scenery. Even if it is early spring, the river is still frozen, the weeds and trees have not yet turned green, but this area is still a completely original ecology after all, so there is a different kind of beauty here. But the 2 armies facing each other here have completely destroyed the atmosphere here. especially the howling Iroquois who was stimulated by the 6 chiefs just now, made this place extremely noisy. However, this kind of noise disappeared completely in just 10 seconds, and the needles fell silently on the huge wasteland. The howling Iroquois seemed to be invisible. The big hand caught his neck, and the howling stopped abruptly. There is no him, because these Iroquois fighters saw an incredible scene with their own eyes. If there was a slow-motion playback, they would clearly see that the big man standing a few hundred meters away suddenly took out a big scary big bow. Although far away, many Iroquois fighters with good eyes can still see the big bow that brings infinite pressure. Many Iroquois fighters who saw the big bow clearly even wondered if such a big bow could really be pulled away. But the facts quickly gave the answer. Just in full view, the amazing big bow was drawn into the shape of a full moon. Then, the hand that hooked the bowstring loosened the bowstring, and an iron arrow glowing with black light seemed to cut through the sky. The black lightning surpassed a distance of 300 meters in a very short period of time and accurately shot into Chief Yoda Seneca's chest. The ghost knew how much power was attached to this iron arrow, because after this iron arrow easily penetrated Chief Yoda Seneca's chest, it slammed into the back of the horses under his crotch. The sharp arrow broke through the fur and flesh of the war horses almost instantly, and came out from behind the war horse's ass. The huge power caused the horse to fall to the ground with serious injuries. This iron arrow, which was more than 1.5 meters long, was so nailed to the ground with the horse and the man. All this is slow to say, but in fact it only took a few seconds. When Yoda Seneca and his horse were nailed to the ground by the iron arrow, the other 5 chiefs did not even react. And at this moment, the 1,000 Iroquois warriors were horrified to discover that the big chief who had just shot this shocking arrow on the opposite side had once again pulled the amazingly large bow into a full moon. In the next moment, Chief Hook of the Ononda tribe became the second person to be nailed to the ground. It's just that Chief Hook and Chief Yoda Seneca are somewhat different, because his horse was not nailed to the ground and was not injured. Because that huge iron arrow full of death breath hit Chief Hook's face, the huge impact instantly rushed Chief Hook away from the horse, and then the iron arrow penetrated the head of Chief Hook, and finally was nailed to the ground with Chief Hook. In less than 10 seconds, the 2 chiefs who were still alive just now were nailed to the ground alive. The most important thing is that the distance between the murderer and the slain is more than 300 meters. Those Iroquois fighters had never thought of any cold weapon in this world other than those artillery that could kill people so accurately at such a long distance. Now, these Iroquois fighters are finally eye-opening. It turns out that the ridiculously big bow in the hands of the big man opposite is not a display. That thing can really kill people, and it can kill people at such a distance. That is definitely a killing weapon that makes people feel terrified. 2 consecutive chiefs were shot and killed. Whether it was the Iroquois fighters or the remaining 4 chiefs had already reacted. The 1,000 Iroquois warriors behind them exclaimed in unison, making their chief run back quickly. The 4 chiefs who were still alive also recalled, turning their heads and running back desperately. It is a pity that when the 4 chiefs turned their horses, the 3rd iron arrow broke through the air. This time, it was the chief of the Mohawk tribe and the chief of the Iroquois alliance. It was shot in from the back by this iron arrow, and then penetrated the war horse's neck, and directly nailed the man and the horse to the ground. The exclamation of the Iroquois fighters came to an abrupt end again, but then they burst into greater exclamation. Because the 4th iron arrow broke through the air again under their gaze. At this time, the remaining 3 chiefs had already turned their horses and started running back desperately, but although the horses ran far faster than people, they still couldn't catch up with the black iron arrows like lightning. The 4th chief to be shot was Morzuk, chief of the Tuscarora tribe. His death was rather miserable, because the iron arrow hit the back of his head, and then most of the back of his skull was lifted away, splashing red and white on the ground. Morzuk was also the only chief who was not nailed to the ground. His head was shot exploded by the huge force attached to that iron arrow. If Yoda Seneca and the others regret it most www.wuxiaspa.com then they definitely shouldn't run these tens of meters to pretend to be forced. If it weren't for running these tens of meters, they would only need to drill into the crowd when the stone bear was shooting arrows, and the stone bear would not be able to find them. But they have ran a distance of tens of meters, and then the distance of tens of meters has become a life and death mode that they can no longer cross. The fifth chief was nailed to the ground with a man and a horse just after running back about 10 meters. And the sixth chief is much better. He was about to run back to the battlefield of the Iroquois fighters, but was thrown off the horse with an arrow. The sixth chief had good luck, and Shi Xiong's arrow did not kill him on the spot, because this iron arrow was shot from his back and pierced out of his stomach. But it doesn't matter if he didn't die on the spot. The length of the special iron arrow shot by Shi Xiong is more than 10 centimeters, and the thickness is about the same as the thumb. The most important thing is that the three-sided arrow is on it. There are 3 deep blood troughs. This kind of blood trough is very insidious. I can't shoot you, but bleeding can also bleed you. Seeing that the 6 chiefs of their own family were shot one by one at a distance of more than 300 meters under their noses, all the Iroquois fighters were dumbfounded. They couldn't make any more movement. They could only look at the 5 horribly dead chiefs dumbly, and listen to the 6th chief's groaning sound. For a while, the needles dropped on the entire battlefield can be heard. Chapter 566, Formation. Ha 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 ha. A burst of laughter suddenly rang, and then a burst of arrogant curses. The dog said, "Dare to pretend to be forced in front of Lao Tzu? Lao Tzu can't kill you." Along with this arrogant laugh and curse, the 1,000 grim bear soldiers standing behind Shi Xiong suddenly shouted in unison. If the boss of his own family stood alone in the middle of the battlefield facing the enemy just now, it greatly encouraged the morale of the grim bear soldiers. Then when these grim bear soldiers witnessed their own boss using his legendary the long bow shot the 6 chiefs of the Iroquois from such a long distance. This kind of thing is simply scoring the blood of these grim bear soldiers, and the needle tube used for scoring blood is still as thick as a bucket. Shi Xiong turned his head to look at the almost crazy group of brothers under him. He also excitedly lifted the animal skin jacket off his body, and then screamed together. His strong and unbelievable upper body was so naked in the cold weather, the bear head tattoo on his chest seemed to come alive. Tep, who had been lying next to Huofeng, seemed to be irritated. He stood upright suddenly, and his 2 front paws the size of a fan suddenly opened, and his mouth opened wide and began to growl. The stone bear raised the bow high, and another Iroquois warrior pointed at the 1,000 dumbfounded Iroquois warriors suddenly shouted, "Brothers, slaughter these guys for Lao Tzu. Today, our ancestral land, you will take it back yourself." This roar was like a starting gun. The violent bear army men behind Shi Xiong, who had been holding back to the sky, the earth and the air, immediately raised the weapons in their hands and started running wildly. If you look down from a high altitude at this time, then you will immediately find that the 1,000 men of the violent bear army seem to have become an unstoppable torrent, rushing towards the Iroquois quickly, and riding on the stone of the fire wind. The bear and the Tep standing aside, like a motionless reef. When the torrent rushed past him, it immediately divided into 2 parts obediently. Although these violent bear army men are crazy, they are crazy and not chaotic. Years and months of training, they have deeply engraved the concept of maintaining the formation in their bones. So these 1,000 men who charged the grim bear army maintained the formation very well. At the forefront are 600 blizzard archers with strong bows. Although the blizzard army has basically realized that all members are equipped with hot weapons, the strong bows, axes and spears have not disappeared in the blizzard army. In order to ensure the combat effectiveness of the grizzly bear soldiers, Stone Bear has not cancelled the application of cold weapons in the grizzly bear army. The soldiers of the grim bear army should spend at least half of their time to train cold weapons in their daily training. In addition, soldiers are not allowed to use hot weapons such as muskets when hunting daily, and they must use cold weapons to hunt. The purpose of doing this is to maintain the bloodliness of the grim bear soldiers and to train the grim bear soldiers well. So, don't think that the firearms of the grizzlies are now invincible, so the soldiers of the grizzlies will not use cold weapons. These strong men didn't let go of the use of coldness. and because the usual training Shi Xiong pays special attention to the formation and the training of mutual cooperation, these soldiers can maintain the formation very well even when they are charging. These soldiers all know a truth, that is, you must trust your comrades in battle on the battlefield, because you only have to believe in your comrades and dare to give your back to your comrades, then you can exert the greatest combat effectiveness. This is the case of the 1,000 violent bear army men who are charging. Even if they are charging at high speed, the formation is still very intact. The 600 archers who ran in the front stepped almost in unison, and quickly approached the Iroquois fighters who were also moving, but the more they ran, the more they dispersed, and when they got close to the enemy about 200 meters away, the 600 archers have formed a battle formation with 2 rows of front and back, with a distance of 60 to 70 centimeters, and a frontal length of close to 200 meters. At this distance, these guys stopped one after another, and then began to bend their bows and shoot arrows. Behind them, there are similarly 2 rows of grim bear soldiers holding spears. This kind of battle formation is where the archer is in front, using the long-range shooting ability of the bow and arrow, to give the enemy a few waves of shooting first. Once the enemy rushes into the range of the spear throwing, the spear thrower behind will throw the spear in his hand. Then there is the axe pinned in the waist, and finally the steel knife for close combat. This is also the tactic commonly used by the 2 sides in the cold weapon era, and it is also the most reasonable tactic. The Iroquois fighters on the opposite side are also charging, but compared to the rigorous formation of the grizzly bear soldiers, the Iroquois' charge seems chaotic. Just now, the stone bear shot their 6 chiefs with 6 arrows in a row. This greatly affected the morale of these Iroquois, but it also aroused their blood. They are now anxious to avenge the chief. Is just their chaotic charge. Although bloody, the effect is much worse. Don't underestimate the role of a rigorous and complete formation on the battlefield. I think the formation of the grim bear soldiers is gradually explored in their usual training. www.wuxiasput.com. The 600 archers in the front are 6 to 70 meters apart from each other, so that once they open their bows and shoot arrows, then almost all of the Iroquois fighters on the opposite side can be affected. Moreover, the range of the strong bow in the hands of the grim bear soldiers far exceeds the range of the bows and arrows in the hands of the Iroquois. Coupled with the precise archery skills of these archers, this is within the range of the Iroquois' bows and arrows. Within a distance of 60 meters, each of these archers can shoot 4 to 5 arrows. Although these archers cannot guarantee that every arrow will hit like stone bear, they can at least eliminate more than half of the Iroquois. And when the Iroquois rushed within the range of their bows and arrows to start shooting, these grizzlies warriors would use their wooden shields for defense. And when the Iroquois rushed to within 50 meters, the spear thrower would attack with more powerful spears than its throwing an axe. These long-range attacks can almost kill all the Iroquois fighters on the opposite side. Even if you were lucky enough to survive, don't forget that there is a big killer behind these grim bear soldiers. The big bow in Shi Xiong's hand is like an M82A1 Barrett anti-equipment heavy sniper at a distance of 300 to 400 meters. As long as he aims at a person, there is almost no possibility that this person will survive! The 2 sides got closer and closer. When the Iroquois fighters rushed to a range of about 150 meters, an officer in charge of the archers suddenly shouted, "Shoot!" The next moment, the rain of arrows covered those Iroquois fighters who were charging. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567, Rolling. This gambling battle between the 2 tribes naturally ended with the defeat of the Iroquois. The already dead Yoda Seneca probably never thought that this carefully designed gambling battle would end in a crushed ending. If he knew about it, I am afraid it would be difficult to be a ghost. But there is no way. Even if he does not design this gambling fight, the Iroquois will not escape the fate of being completely annexed. It can only be said that the gambling battle he designed saved more Iroquois lives. Actually, Yoda Senuka can't be blamed. He really underestimated the bravery and weapons of the Grim Bear soldiers. Even if they are all cold weapons, because the materials used to build these weapons are different, the performance of the weapons they create naturally differs too much. As far as bows and arrows are concerned, the Iroquois' bows and arrows can only shoot up to 80 or 90 meters, while these strong bows in the hands of the Grim Bear soldiers generally have a longest shooting range of about 150 meters. In addition, the speed of archery is already very fast, so this 60-meter gap has become an insurmountable moment of life and death for the Iroquois. Even if these Iroquois fighters run fast, they still have weapons on them, and this is a wasteland and it is not a professional track, so it takes at least 8 or 9 seconds to run these 60 meters. This is 8 or 9 seconds, enough time for the Grim Bear soldiers to shoot 3 to 4 arrows. If you count the time the Iroquois stopped to shoot and shoot, it would be enough for the grizzly warriors to shoot another round. On average, each person shoots 4 arrows. For 600 archers, that's 2,400 arrows. Even if the hit rate is only 1/5, it is enough to shoot half of the Iroquois fighters. The most important thing is that this process of being beaten but unable to fight back is really too awkward, and seeing the comrades around me being shot and killed continuously, that kind of fear is also unbearable. And the Iroquois also discovered that when the rest of them rushed to the distance where they could shoot their bows and arrows with death, the Cherokees on the opposite side shamelessly took out a wooden shield to block their heads. How are you going to fight this battle? Shooting arrows at a distance of 80 or 90 meters, most of the arrows will be blocked by the wooden shield. Even if some arrows are lucky enough to hit the Cherokee, they will not cause any fatal damage. As the saying goes, at the end of the crossbow, there are those who cannot pass through Lujin. But when the Iroquois continued to run forward with death, those Cherokee threw out their spears shamelessly. Throwing a spear is not like a bow and arrow. When a bow and arrow hit a person, as long as it doesn't hit a key vital part, it will basically not kill a person. But throwing a spear is different. This kind of throwing spear made of hollow cast iron pipes more than 2 meters long, 2 centimeters in diameter, and weighing more than 10 kilograms. One end is sharpened so sharply, once it is pierced on a person, it will almost end up with one dead. Even if you can't get to the point, is the hollow space where you throw a spear a decoration? The bloodletting of this thing is more ruthless than the blood tank. Once it penetrates into the human body, the blood will puff out like tap water, and you can't stop it. The kind of pipe fork used by many street gangsters in their previous life. It is ruthless to pierce people and let blood, but this kind of hollow spear is more ruthless than pipe fork. Even if there were Iroquois fighters who managed to escape the attack of bows and spears, they just ran forward without 2 steps, and the overwhelming axe throwing came again. This kind of throwing axe is similar to the small axe used by the underworld thugs in the kung fu movie filmed by the Star Master in the previous life. This thing is not inferior to the throwing spear, although it is small, it is very accurate. One axe can make the target fall to the ground. Therefore, these 1,000 Iroquois fighters didn't even rush 30 meters in front of the Grim Bear fighters, and they were all brought down. On the other hand, on the side of the Grim Bear soldiers, except for 2 unlucky ones who were shot by Iroquois arrows and died, and more than 30 were shot wounds, everyone else was intact. The loss is nothing more than the strength that is less than 1/3 of the usual training. In fact, when the Stone Bear shot and killed the 6 chiefs of the Iroquois alliance and the Grizzly Army soldiers began to charge, the Iroquois camp began to riot. Dozens of war horses rushed out of the Iroquois camp first, seeming to want to support them. A large number of Iroquois were followed behind these war horses. As a result, the Stone Bear opened the longbow 7 times in a row, and shot and killed 7 Iroquois riding horses at a distance of 400 meters. These Iroquois were taken aback. Then the 76 mortars in the Grim Bear camp fired. Although there were only 2 volleys of more than 20 76 mortars, these 2 volleys were directly thrown by the Iroquois who were ready to support. 400 to 500 corpses were dropped. The remaining Iroquois immediately scattered and fled. In the end, This gambling battle ended with such a crushing ending. The entire battlefield of the gambling battle is full of Iroquois corpses and howling Iroquois wounded. The scene is extremely miserable. And this is not a play. In order to prevent the Iroquois from escaping, but also to prevent the Iroquois from repenting, the stone bear directly blew the short and two long horns. Then, the 76 cannon that had been deployed a long time ago began to fire deterrently. The 76 cannons of the 3 artillery regiments and hundreds of 76 mortars started shooting a few kilometers away from the Iroquois camp. www.wuxiaspa.com. Of course, the gunners were not targeting the Iroquois. Under the guidance of hot air balloon observers, the gunners aimed at the open space next to the Iroquois camp. Just now, more than 20 76 mortars have shown these Iroquois the horror of what is called a thermal weapon. Now the more powerful cannon than the 76 mortar is afraid of firing. The scene is even more terrifying. Hundreds of artillery shells exploded continuously around the Iroquois camp. The dust that was thrown up covered the sky, and the sound of the explosion was even more earth-shattering. Not to mention these Iroquois. This kind of saturated shooting, even during World War I and later generations, is enough to be called horror. After the threatening shooting that lasted for several minutes ended, there was no one who dared to jump out of the Iroquois camp on the opposite side. Under such circumstances, the remaining guards and the cavalry units of the 2nd Division were dispatched. These warriors, riding on horses and holding cavalry bear rifles, rushed through the battlefield of gambling like a storm cloud, rushed to the front of the Iroquois camp, and then surrounded the Iroquois camp. Stand up. Even if the Iroquois repented, they can't jump up now. Because the stone bear gave orders before the start of this gambling fight, if there are Iroquois who dare to resist, then kill it. In this way, surrounded by cavalry troops and threatened by artillery in the distance, the Iroquois finally couldn't make waves anymore. Chapter 568. Detainee. This is our ancestral land. Stone Xiong scanned the surroundings while riding a horse, and asked the red clouds around him. Han Yun nodded. Her emotions had calmed down a lot at this time. She was not as excited as before. Originally, the stone bear was planning to wait for all the Iroquois to settle down before coming back to the ancestral land, but neither Hong Yun nor Bakarazu could wait any longer. So they both took the stone bear and Kara Krilu. Under the protection of personal guards, he can't wait to come to the ancestral land. As a result, the great witch, Dr. Bakarazu, just walked into the ancestral land, and after confirming several places with Hong Yun, he swayed excitedly. Shi Xiong was worried that the old man's heart could not stand this kind of stimulation, so he asked the guards to take the old man directly. Gone. If this old man should fall here, it would be a big joke. Hong Yun is young, she can withstand this kind of stimulation in her 30s, so she stayed. That's right, Great Bear, this is our ancestral land. Just now, the Great Witch, Dr. Bakarazu, and I confirmed each other's heritage. Many situations here are no different from the records. So, this is indeed us, the ancestral land. Hong Yun's excited cheeks were red. Well, don't get excited. If you don't want to be taken away by your guards, it's best to calm down, Shi Xiong said with a smile. Hong Yun nodded and started to take a deep breath. Seeing Hong Yun as happy as a child who got his beloved toy, Shi Xiong sighed silently in his heart. You two are only now sure that this is the ancestral land. You two can't be 100% sure. Alas, Shi Xiong wouldn't say these words indifferently. Otherwise Hong Yun would definitely jump with him. Boss, I found a few caves in the valley of the mountain ahead, with people inside. However, these people seem to be imprisoned here. There are not many people, only more than 100 people. The bobcat rode a horse. He got out of a small road and leaned closer to Shi Xiong and whispered. Huh? The imprisoned person, did our people do it? Shi Xiong frowned and asked. No, it seems that there should have been a small tribe in that valley, but I don't know why. The people of this tribe seemed to have offended the Iroquois and were locked up. Hey, this is interesting. People who dare to offend the Iroquois at this time are probably not ordinary people, right? Shi Xiong touched his chin and thought thoughtfully. Uncle Bobcat, There are still people around. Are there any Iroquois? No, those people were locked in the cave by some simple wooden fences, but the strange thing is that there are no Iroquois guards outside now, but those people can't come out yet. What are you two muttering about? Hong Yun asked with some dissatisfaction. She was in agitated mood at this time, but she still didn't have the usual stability and composure at all, and she would become emotional if she was a little irritated. Shi Xiong smiled bitterly, and hurriedly leaned in to tell the bobcat's discovery again. Kiao Lok Lilu, who has been with Hong Yun, naturally heard these words. He hesitated and said, "Those detainees obviously have problems. Let's go and take a look. After all, this is our ancestral land. What factors of instability exist?" Shi Xiong and Hong Yun both nodded, and several people, accompanied by their guards, followed the bobcat along the path to the north. The environment here is quite well preserved, and unlike the wasteland outside, this land surrounded by 2 mountains and 2 rivers is full of tall trees, including pine, birch, maple, and oak trees. Although most of the leaves of these trees are gone at this time, Shi Xiong and the others can also imagine that once summer comes, this place will be another beautiful and enchanting scenery. It's just that a few people didn't want to appreciate the scenery here. They followed the bobcats to the north. Along the way, they often encountered groups of grizzly soldiers escorting groups of Iroquois to the outside of the dense forest. These Iroquois were originally gathered to resist the Grim Bear army, but as a result of a gambling battle, their fate was immediately reversed. Along the way, Shi Xiong couldn't help but wondering whether the gambling method that the Iroquois came up with was correct. If you think about it from the perspective of an Iroquois, this kind of gambling is undoubtedly a way to survive from the dead. Although it's a bit despicable, if they really win, then their tribe will be saved. After being blocked by the Grim Bear army, all possible escape routes were blocked by the Grim Bear army. Under the strong force of the Grim Bear army, Yoda Seneca came up with this method with excuse. Ask yourself, if you change to Yoda Seneca, I am afraid I will make such a loss. It's just that the 6 chiefs of the Cherokee Alliance, including Yoda Seneca, overestimated the combat effectiveness of their fighters and underestimated the combat effectiveness of the Grim Bear fighters and the power of the weapons in their hands. The chicken failed to eclipse the rice, and it was finally served by the violent bear army in a pot. You must know that there are more than 30,000 Iroquois gathered near the Cherokee ancestors, which is almost 1/3 of the entire Iroquois League. There are more than 15,000 strong Iroquois fighters alone. Because there was a mixed 8th Division in the south and the 1st Division in the east, the Iroquois had to divide their forces to defend the mixed 8th Division in the south and the 1st Division in the east. Therefore, the fighters and people they gather here www.wuxiasp.com are not all fighters of the Iroquois League. But even so, the Iroquois caught in a pot kept the grizzly soldiers busy for a long time. Fortunately, in the gambling battle, the 6 chiefs of the Iroquois Alliance were given a pot of food by themselves. Now the Iroquois is in a situation where there is no leader in the group of dragons, and it is extremely chaotic. Because there is no one to command these Iroquois, the soldiers of the grizzly army rely on a strong threat of force to let these Iroquois honestly be included. Shi Xiong pondered as he walked, and quickly completed the 5 or 6 miles. In front of the crowd appeared a valley about 500 meters long, only 100 meters wide at the narrowest point, and about 150 meters high. This valley is the dividing line of the 2 mountains surrounding the ancestral land, and the 2 rivers surrounding the ancestral land also converge here, forming a small river about 20 meters wide on the east side of the valley, extending northward. It's just that there is no water in the creek, and it hasn't defrosted yet. The cliffs on both sides of this valley are not very steep cliffs, but sloped. However, on a cliff on the west side of the southern end of the valley, there is a cliff that is recessed inward and presents a negative angle. This cliff is very flat, about 70 meters high, with some fuzzy patterns drawn on it. In the middle of the cliff, there is a totem pole carved from a stone pillar. And when Hong Yun saw the totem pole on this cliff, his face suddenly changed. Chapter 569, Place of Worship. This is. Hong Yun slipped off his horse with excitement, and staggered towards the cliff. This time even Stone Bear and Jolakrilu looked dumbfounded. When they came to the ancestral land before, Hong Yun and the great witch, Dr. Bakarzu, were already excited. The old witch doctor even almost pulled over with excitement, but now Shi Xiong felt that if he didn't care about it, Hong Yun would be excited to pull over. Shi Xiong also hurriedly dismounted, ran 2 steps quickly, and grabbed Hong Yun's arm with one hand. When Kiao Lakrilu saw something was wrong, he dismounted and ran over. However, Hong Yun didn't seem to notice that she was being supported. Her eyes had been locked tightly on the cliff and the totem pole under the cliff that had been weathered and was about to be impenetrable. Because this cliff wall is recessed inward, it presents a negative angle, so it can automatically block the rain when it rains. Therefore, although the murals painted on the cliffs are blurred, it is still possible to see roughly what they are painting. It's just the totem pole that is really a little awkward. I don't know how many years this totem pole has been erected here. The edges and corners of the stone surface are long gone, leaving only some faintly variable shapes. And this totem pole is not the same as the totem poles of most tribes or tribes. The totem poles of other tribes or tribes are mostly carved from a whole piece of wood, and different patterns of gods are carved from top to bottom according to the status of the gods worshipped by the tribes and tribes. Some totem poles are also made of stone, but instead of a whole stone pillar, they are carved piece by piece, and then piled up one by one, and finally fixed. The 7 to 8 meter high totem pole with a diameter of about 80 centimeters was carved from a whole stone pillar. I don't know if this stone pillar was formed naturally or was carried here by others. The gods carved from the top to the bottom of the stone pillars can only be faintly distinguished. The round carving pattern on the top should be the of the sun. In the Iroquois or Cherokee tribe, the highest deity is Orenda, which is the supreme sun god, and the sculptures of various gods are below. Shi Xiong remembered that after he escaped to the Gaoshu tribe with his uncle Jiao Naiu, he was once recognized by the previous Kabulu high priest, that is, Hong Yun's mother. Later, after Hong Yun's mother died, he saw the totem pole erected in the Gaoshu tribe for the first time. The Longhair Cattle tribe also has its own totem pole, but that totem pole is carved out of wood. The totem pole of the Gaoshu tribe was built with stones. The top of the totem pole of the High Tree tribe is carved with Orenda, and below it is the of the sky, the of the earth, the of thunder, the of rain, the of wind, the of eagle, the of bear, the of wolf, and many other totem gods. Although the various gods carved on the tall totem pole in front of him are completely unclear, the stone bear can still recognize what these gods are. What makes Shi Xiong strange is that these gods are carved in positions and images, almost exactly the same as the totem pole of the Gaoshu tribe. The only difference is that this totem pole is carved from a whole stone pillar, while the totem pole of the Gaoshu tribe is built with a lot of huge stones. And Stone Bear also determined that whether it was the totem pole that was erected in front of the Monongahela king's tent, or the larger totem pole that is now in front of the Great Bear Palace in Shangjin, the style is almost the same as that of the Gaoshu tribe. The totem is exactly the same. And when the Stone Bear got closer and looked at the totem pole, it was obvious that the 3 totem poles in the Gaoshu tribe, Monongahela, and the Great Bear Palace in Shangjin gave people a solemn feeling. In terms of feeling, besides solemnity, the totem pole in front of me also has a kind of vicissitudes of years and a vague nobility. Mingming Gaoshu tribe, Monongahela, and the 3 totem poles of Shangjin are more gorgeous and more beautiful, but Shi Xiong never feels that the 3 totem poles before this totem pole seem to have met the emperor's minister. That's right. Although this totem pole is already dilapidated, there is no 4-color ribbon that represents the square hung on it, and there is no wild leather and eagle feathers underneath, and the totem pole is not good-looking and old and dilapidated, but like a high emperor, although silent, but overlooking his subjects. Jolakrilu clearly saw some differences. With surprise on his face, he asked Shi Xiong in a low voice, "Boss, this totem pole seems to..." Shi Xiong turned his head and asked in a low voice, "You feel it too?" Jolakrilu nodded vigorously as if he had seen a ghost. All of a sudden, Shi Xiong only felt his arm loose, and then with a puff, The Shi Xiong and Kiao who were talking in a low voice were shocked and raised their heads at the same time. Only then did they realize that Hong Yun had escaped the Shi Xiong. Supported, he knelt directly in front of the totem pole. Hong Yun's actions made the two people feel that their guess was true. Hong Yun, who was kneeling on the ground, burst into tears, crying like a child who could not find his parents. But whether it was Stone Bear or Jolakrilu, he could hear a taste of joy from Hong Yun's cries. Stone Bear and Karaklilu are a bit at a loss. Obviously, Red Cloud, who knows more tribal history than himself, has clearly recognized the origin of the totem pole in front of him and the murals painted on the cliff. Sure enough, Hong Yun cried happily for a long time, and then began to salute the totem pole. In the ceremony she performed, www.wuxiaspot.com is definitely the most advanced sacrificial ceremony of the entire Cherokee tribe. This kind of etiquette, only when the tribe holds the grandest sacrifice and prayer or celebration, will the high priest bring many sacrifices to perform this kind of ceremony. Although there are no other sacrifices around Hong Yun, and she does not wear the exclusive costume of the high priest, whether it is Stone Bear or Kiao, it can be seen how serious and pious Hong Yun salutes. This kind of etiquette has to be done, and it takes at least 20 minutes. Stone Bear and Jolakrilu dared not disturb Hong Yun, so they could only stand aside and watch Hong Yun salute. Until Hong Yun finished his salute, Shi Xiong and Jolakrilu got together. Hong Yun's eyes are red, but she has a very happy smile. "Chief, Great Bear, Commander Joraklilu, I think you'd better gather all the senior leaders of our tribe here, because this is the most sacred place of worship in our ancestral land. On the cliff in front of you, the murals of our tribe were hand-painted by our tribe's ancestors, and this totem pole is also the earliest totem pole of our tribe." Hong Yun's words were not loud, but they made the outer and inner parts of the Stone Bear and Jolakrilu soft. They didn't expect that the Cherokee ancestral land, which has lost its people for more than 300 years, still retains the tribe's most primitive place of worship. This is definitely a great news. Compared to this good news, it is not so important to conquer the Iroquois. Chapter 570. Bereaved, Shi Xiong walked over and pulled Hong Yun up, and asked very seriously, "High Priest, can you really be sure that this is the place where the ancestral land was sacrificed, the most important place in the ancestral land of our tribe?" "Yes, I can be sure." Although Hong Yun was very excited and her eyes were red with tears, she still nodded in response. "You should know that the inheritance of our Kabul sacrifice line is very special. As early as my mother chose me from our brothers and sisters to replace her as the next Kabul sacrifice, my mother taught me a lot alone every day. The inheritance of the Kabul sacrificial line, among these lineages, in addition to the unique ability inheritance of our line, the inheritance of the ancestral land is the most important. In the inheritance that my mother taught me, there are a lot of things about the ancestral land. For example, the ancestral land is in a valley with several caves. The ancestral land is in a valley with several caves, a rock wall with many pictures, and under the rock wall, there is a totem pole carved from a whole stone pillar. Hong Yun became more and more excited when she spoke. She pointed to the rock wall and the totem pole and said, "Look at it. How exactly do all this in front of you match what is said in the inheritance?" After a pause, Hong Yun said more excitedly, "Especially in the inheritance left to me by my mother, there are some records about these rock paintings. These rock paintings are actually recorded by our ancestors from the emergence of our tribe to the time we were driven by the Iroquois. Important events between the ancestral land. The first of the petroglyphs is that our tribe appeared in a cave in this valley under the protection of the Orenda and under the blessing of the of Thunder. Then, we the tribes of this valley gradually grew from those caves in this valley. As for the last painting, it is about the Iroquois and Delaware betraying us, and then they jointly expelled us from our ancestral land, and our ancestors were forced to migrate south. Look at these rock paintings. Although it's hard to identify the first and last paintings, you can vaguely see what these paintings are, especially the last painting. It's still relatively clear now. After all, only 3 paintings have been drawn, for more than 100 years, if you look carefully. You will definitely be able to see what the painting is. Zhou Lakrilu was stunned, but when Hong Yun finished saying this, he did not look up at the rock paintings. After all, it is not easy to identify the content of the rock paintings. Zhou Lakrilu pulled the stone bear and said in a deep voice, "Just now the lynx said that some people in this valley were imprisoned in the cave. You said, would these people be?" Hong Yun was taken aback when she heard it, and she immediately became excited again, pulling the stone bear and saying, "Go, let's go to those caves quickly. We have to confirm to those people." The strength in Hong Yun's hands was so huge, even with the size and strength of the stone bear, he was caught off guard. After stood firmly, Shi Xiong patted Hong Yun on the shoulder and whispered, "Don't worry, this place has been completely controlled by the violent bear army, we don't need to be so worried." "No, you don't know. There is one thing recorded in the lineage of our Cabru sacrificial lineage. When we were driven out of our ancestral land by the Iroquois and Delawares and migrated southward, at that time a daughter of the high priest Ren Cabru insisted on staying in the ancestral land." Hong Yun had calmed down when he said these words. "Ah, someone in your line once stayed in the ancestral land? How is this possible? Would the Iroquois agree with you to do this?" Shi Xiong asked in disbelief. "It's not impossible. According to the inheritance records, the chieftain of the tribe and the high priest Cabru put aside harsh words to the Iroquois, saying that the tribe's ancestral land must be protected. Moreover, the tribe left behind. There are very few people, just over 100 people. This kind of people will not pose any threat to the Iroquois. At that time, the chief and my ancestors also said that if you Iroquois do not agree to this matter, then the tribe will not hesitate to fight to the end." At that time, although the population of the tribe was only 50,000 to 60,000, it was still a big force. If the tribe really decided to fight to the end, the Iroquois would not be able to bear this loss. So, the Iroquois people agreed to this condition. The tribe moved south, and here left some of our Cabru priests. And my mother also told me that the ancestor left at that time was originally the Cabru high priest at the time, the candidate for the next high priest. Stone Bear and Kiao Lakrilu were stunned. They didn't expect that there was such a torturous secret in it. Hong Yun said quietly, "Actually, if those imprisoned are really the people of our tribe who stayed here to take care of the ancestral land, then they are the Orthodox High Priest of Kabul. I am the High Priest of Kabul, a side branch of Avain." Shi Xiong was speechless for a while, and finally patted Hong Yun's shoulder lightly and said, "If those people really belong to your High Priest Cabru, then I will treat them kindly. As for you, Hong Yun, you are the real Cabru High Priest of our tribe. I have always insisted on this point, and all the people in the tribe also insisted on this. Therefore, you are not allowed to say that you are an offshoot of the Cabru High Priest in the future. www.wuxiaspa.com. You are the heir to the Orthodox High Priest of Cabru," said. Shi Xiong turned his head to look at Zhou Lakrilu and said, "You know about this, so you have to keep it secret." Shi Xiong looked at Hong Yun and Zhou Lakrilu again, and said solemnly, "This matter is only known to the three of us today, and must not be known to the fourth person. Do you understand? If it is leaked, it will definitely cause turmoil in the tribe. At this time, the stability of the tribe comes first, and nothing is as important as this." Zhou Lakrilu and Hong Yun are not fools. They naturally understand the importance of this matter. Now that the Cherokee tribe has laid such a large foundation, if the high priest, who is the spiritual leader of the tribe, suddenly hears any bad news, it will be a great event for the whole tribe. Seeing Hong Yun and Kiao Lakrilu nod their heads, Shi Xiong turned his head and beckoned to his head guard. After the head guard ran over, he said, "Now you will take someone to block this place completely. People are not allowed to enter here. Offenders, kill them. In addition, use the radio to notify the back to let them bring my gown and the gowns of the high priest and the high commander." The chief guard is Ashika Maziron. He naturally wouldn't ask why, so he hurried to arrange these things. Shi Xiong turned around and said to Hong Yun and Zhou Lakrilu, "We are going to meet those people. I think we should go with the highest etiquette. If they are really the bereaved family who have taken care of the ancestral land for more than 300 years, then they deserve our etiquette." Chapter 571, Old woman. Because of the blockade, the valley is quiet. The four people who changed their costumes, Stone Bear, Red Cloud, Karaklilu, and Bakalazu, who insisted on coming and pushing Bakalazu's bone spear, walked along the quiet dirt road in the valley to there, in front of several caves. Shi Xiong did not bring anyone else, not even his guards, because he had to find out the true identities of these detainees before he could make a specific decision. However, these people are very likely to be extremely distinguished, and it is easy to cause unnecessary turbulence. If it hadn't been for Bakarzu to come, Shi Xiong wouldn't even want to bring him. Otherwise, the teacher's bone spear of the dignified 2nd Division would not be transformed into a cart driver. There are a total of 1 big, 4 small and 5 caves. I don't know how these 5 caves were formed, but they will definitely not be dug out by humans, because these 5 caves are all in the rock wall. The entrances of the 5 caves are blocked by wooden fences. Although these wooden fences made of logs with the thickness of an adult's arm are very rough, they are definitely strong, and judging from the newness of these wooden fences, these things are obviously made. It didn't take long. On the north side of these caves, near the bank of the small river, the Stone Bear can see a piece of cultivated farmland. The area is not very large, but because of the season, it seems that there is nothing growing in the land. It can be seen that the people living here are not very good, even worse than the long-haired cow tribe in Stone Bear's memory. Hong Yun and Bakalazu sitting in the car apparently noticed Shi Xiong's gaze. They also looked at it, but their expressions changed again. Obviously, they also realized that people living here are really hard. When they arrived in front of the largest cave, Shi Xiong and the others stood outside the cave entrance, and the bone spear walked over with a wink, drew a sharp steel knife from the waist, and cut the vines tied to the wooden fence with a single knife. It was broken, and several small bells ding jing hung on the top of the wooden fence, rang for a long time. Shi Xiong looked at the little bells, and shook his head speechlessly. Don't look down on this thing, but it's definitely effective, whether it's anti-theft or preventing the inside from running out. If someone wants to untie the vines tied to the wooden fence or climbs up the wooden fence to take off the bells, it will cause the sound of the bells, and those who look after it will know immediately. But now that the Iroquois has been completely settled, no one cares about those little bells. The wooden fence was free of the vines, and slowly opened outward. However, the cave is a bit dark, and the Stone Bear can only vaguely see some people in the cave. Bone Spear carrying a steel knife opened the wooden fences at the entrance of the other 4 caves, but no one came out for a long time. Stone Xiong looked at Hong Yun and Bakarzu, and found that both of them were nervous, so he shook his head and said loudly, "Please come out from the cave. I am the current chief of the Cherokee, Great Bear. The people next to me are the Cherokee High Priest Kabru, the Bakarzu Great Witch Doctor and the leader of the former Crooked Deer tribe, and now the Cherokee Chief Karaklilu." After saying this, there was still no movement in the cave. Shi Xiong helplessly shook his head again and continued, "Come out. The Iroquois have been defeated by our Cherokee warriors. Now this land is the ancestral land of our Cherokee tribe, has been completely taken back by our warriors. I, the chief bear of the Cherokee tribe, are here to ensure your safety. Please come out. I have something to ask you." There was still silence in the cave. Just as the Stone Bear was about to enter the cave, an old female voice suddenly sounded. "Are you really the chief of the tribe? The woman next to you is really the high priest of Kabul tribe?" "High priest?" Before Stone Xiong could answer, the red cloud on the side said in a crying voice, "Yes, I am the high priest Kabru of the tribe, the descendant of the high priest Kabru who once walked out here. You really are they the people who stayed behind to protect the ancestral land?" Ah! With a long sigh, people began to appear at the entrance of the largest cave, and an old woman who seemed to be 70 or 80 years old came out with the help of 2 thin, awkward women. This old woman looks older than Bakarzu, even if she is not worse than Hong Yun's mother back then. However, this old woman's eyes were very sharp. After she came out, she did not speak, but carefully looked at the dress of the Stone Bear, especially the costume of the Kabru high priest and Hong Yun. She looked very carefully. Shi Xiong and they all consciously didn't move. Hong Yun even turned his body a few times in coordination. After a long time, the look in the old woman's eyes was no longer sharp, but her tears became hazy. Yes, this is what the high priest Kabru wears. Girl, you are really the high priest Kabru of the tribe. The old woman's tone was calm at first, but she couldn't say a word before she cried out. But she still turned her head and shouted into the cave, "Come out, our tribe has come to pick us up." With this voice, the 5 holes began to slowly walk out, but most of the people who came out were old and weak women and children, and there were no young strong men. And these people are thin and a little bit of a human shape, and all of them have an extremely unhealthy dish on their faces. The experienced Joe Lacklilu whispered in Shi Xiong's ear immediately, "They have been hungry for too long." A flash of anger flashed across Shi Xiong's face, but before he could say anything, he saw these people kneel down one by one with tears, doing some of the Cherokee's unique audience with difficulty. Etiquette. Seeing this www.wuxiaspad.com, Shi Xiong didn't care about what to say, and quickly walked up to help the people who were kneeling on the ground one by one. Han Yun followed, and even the old Bakarzu struggled to get out of the car, tremblingly to help the people of the tribe. "You must not do this. I came late, and I didn't rescue you in time. I'm sorry for you," Shi Xiong said sincerely as all the people kneeling on the ground stood up. Finally, he bowed deeply at them. Now, this group of originally indifferent people finally couldn't help it anymore, and one by one held each other's arms and cried. Except for some little dolls who didn't understand what happened, the place was suddenly enveloped by crying. Ishikamo also felt that his eyes were a little swollen, and his nose was a little sour. At this time, if he still didn't understand the identity of these people in front of him, he would be a sincere fool. "Jola, Krilu, you go out immediately and let them send a cooking class with a large pot and rice noodles. Well, by the way, don't make the big fish and meat, just bring some more vegetables, pickles and milk," Shi Xiong ordered. These people have obviously been hungry for many days, so they can only eat some liquid food and light vegetables. Big fish and meat are good, but their stomachs can't stand it. Joe Lacklilu immediately turned around and left. Shi Xiong turned around and began to support each of the people to sit down slowly. At this time, I don't care about anything that is clean or unclean. The bodies of these people are even dirtier than the soil on the ground. Chapter 572. Cautiously, Bakalazu can't do much. He can only stand there trembling, his mouth constantly twitching and muttering to himself. These people are really tribes who took the initiative to stay behind to protect the ancestral land, and it's also the line of Kabru sacrifice. The old man was standing behind Shi Xiong, and his self-talk naturally fell in Shi Xiong's ears. Shi Xiong turned his head and glared at Bakalazu, and whispered, "Great witch doctor, remember your current identity. Although you can guess this, you must hide it in your heart. Do you understand? It is extremely rare for Stone Bear to make such a move, but Bakarzu has long been alive," and he immediately understood what his chief meant. He nodded slowly, and stopped muttering, but he didn't mind Shi Xiong's attitude just now. It could be seen that the old man had already figured out the stakes in this in an instant. The cooking class came quickly. After all, this cooking class is a cooking class of a certain camp of the Grim Bear Army who is responsible for guarding outside, and it is not far from here. Bone Spear was sent to supervise the cooking class to cook. In fact, Bone Spear also noticed that the atmosphere here seemed a bit wrong. Although he used to be the leader of the Bone Spear tribe, one of the 4 guardian tribes, he really didn't like to participate in politics matters. Therefore, not only was he not dissatisfied with the fact that he was sent out to supervise the cooking, he also liked it a little bit. In fact, when he came, Bone Spear vaguely realized that the identities of these people were somewhat different, especially the actions of the chiefs and the high priests just now made Bone Spear understand that the identities of these people were unusual. It's just Bone Spear. It is clear that he is now the commander of the 2nd Division of the Grim Bear Army, who holds a heavy weight. He is the top 10 figure in the entire tribe, so Bone Spear cherishes his current position. He also doesn't want to lose his current status and power somehow because of certain uncertain factors, so he doesn't want to get involved in certain things. It is enough for Lao Tzu to be the commander of the 2nd Division of the Grim Bear Army. Lao Tzu does not participate in other things. This is the attitude of Bone Spear. The fragrant rice porridge and delicate side dishes were brought up, and a group of people gobbled it up there, as if a starving ghost was reincarnated. Shi Xiong couldn't bear to look at it anymore, and Hong Yun kept wiping his tears with sadness. Bakalazu looked up at the sky tremblingly with his crutches, his eyes flushed as well. As for Kara Klilu, the dignified leader of the Cherokee clan, who is equivalent to the later prime minister, is now just a boy in charge of serving meals. Although these tribesmen can't swallow their tongues, to what Shi Xiong expected, they are not greedy. Everyone just drank a bowl of porridge, and after eating some vegetables, they stopped serving. A dozen or so young children were still crying and wanting to continue drinking porridge, but they dared not make any more noise when they were snapped abruptly by the crackling buttocks. Even if they looked at the steaming cauldron with so much desire, they just didn't return to the bowl. This made Shi Xiong's heart hurt. Obviously, one of these people is very clear about their own physical conditions, but more of it is a cautiousness that is slowly cultivated by being in a state of oppression for a long time. Hong Yun opened his mouth to persuade them to continue eating. Shi Xiong held Hong Yun. My people, it is actually a very correct choice for you to only drink a bowl of porridge. Your stomach can't stand the overeating, so it may be fatal. Shi Xiong tried to slow down his tone, but don't worry, your hard days will come to an end from today. When your body is well developed, I will be responsible for what you want to eat. You are the great heroes of the tribe, and you deserve any enjoyment. That is what you deserve. These people still didn't speak, but they all bowed to the stone bear with their hands on their breasts, and the scene was still silent. Shi Xiong shook his head slightly, then sighed and said, "Well, I know that it is really not easy for you. You also need to rest and recuperate, but now I, the High Priest Kabru, and the Great Witch of Bakarazu the Doctor needs to understand your situation over the past few years. This is very important for the entire tribe. Can we talk about it seriously?" Shi Xiong's eyes have been looking at the old woman in the lead. There was a smile on the old woman's face. Obviously, she was satisfied with Shi Xiong's manner of speaking. But she still didn't speak, just turned her head to look at the soldiers in the cooking squad who couldn't be far away. Shi Xiong immediately turned his head and said to Bone Spear, "Bone Spear, you take the brothers from the cooking class and withdraw at first. It is enough to have me here." The warriors in the cooking squad also heard Shi Xiong's order, and after tidying up one by one, they came to Shi Xiong with the most standard salute from a distance, and then quickly followed the Bone Spear away. When their figure disappeared at the end of the path, the old woman nodded and said, "Chief, you can see that your prestige is really high, and we people are also very pleased." Hong Yun smiled and said, "Grandma, our strong bear chief has unparalleled prestige in the tribe. He has accepted the guidance of the Great Orenda himself, and reading www.hukinshu.com later led our tribe to rise. Now the land we live in has almost all been conquered by our tribes. The Creeks in the south, the Shawnees in the north, the Sioux and Shallons in the west, the Navajo and the Comanche in the southwest. There are the Chippewas, Miamis, Ottawas who conquered last year, and the Hurons and Iroquois this year, all conquered under the leadership of the chief. It is no exaggeration to say that our Cherokee absolutely it is the most powerful tribe on this land." Hong Yun's words moved the old lady and the old and weak women and children behind her. The old woman asked excitedly, "Priest Kabru, are all these things true? Those Yaluos, the K people have been completely conquered by our tribe?" Hong Yun nodded proudly at the same time. "Yes. The land area owned by our tribe is tens of thousands of times as large as before, and the population controlled by the tribe is hundreds of times as large as before. Now, our tribe is this piece of land, the true king of the land." Shi Xiong also smiled mildly. "Our high priest Kabru is right. Now this land is in the hands of our tribe. So, you don't have to worry anymore, and you will never have that kind of suffering again. It's time for me. I promise you this in the name of the chief of the tribe." The old woman wiped the corners of her eyes, and then looked at Shi Xiong seriously and asked, "Chief, Have you really been directed by the Great Orinda? Ishikama nodded seriously. Well, then I will tell you about our situation over the years. Chapter 573, Reproductive Isolation. These of us are indeed those who stayed behind to guard the ancestral land. We claim to be the guardian tribe. The old woman sat on a stone that had been polished smoothly and spoke slowly. Behind her and on the left and right were the people of the tribe, and Shi Xiong and the others did not mind sitting on the other rocks, listening carefully to what the old woman said. The old woman looked at Hong Yun, with a kind smile on her face. You are the Kabru high priest of the tribe today, then you should know who we are. Hong Yun nodded without hesitation. I know, and I know that if it wasn't the ancestor who chose to stay to protect the ancestral land, then you, or one of you, should be the Kabru today. Priest Lu is right. Shi Xiong swallowed and sighed inwardly. Hong Yun didn't hold it back, so he still said this. Well, it may also be that the miserable situation of these people made Hong Yun unbearable. For Shi Xiong, who is now in a high position and holding power, he doesn't care about the life and death of these people. Although these people are good at caring for the ancestral land, they are nothing compared to Hong Yun. Don't say that they are just the survivors of the High Priest Kabru. Even if they still claim to be the High Priest Kabru, it is absolutely impossible for Stone Bear to agree. Let alone how important the High Priest Kabru is to the stability of the entire tribe. It is just that Hong Yun and his mother were the first to support him. It is impossible for Stone Bear to wear the name of High Priest Kabru on others' heads. The High Priest of Kabul can only be served by Hong Yun or a descendant of Hong Yun. Anyone else who wants to serve as this High Priest will not be able to pass here in Stone Bear. Ishikama has always had this idea, otherwise he would not have said that before he came just now. Whether it is for the stability of the tribe or the support of Hong Yun, it is absolutely impossible for Stone Bear to let others serve as the High Priest of Kabru. Although Hong Yun said this at this time, it was very wrong, but Shi Xiong couldn't stop it. After all, Hong Yun is the High Priest of Kabru, a figure who is on the same level as her in name, and she has the right to say these things. So Shi Xiong can only helplessly sigh in his heart. What Shi Xiong did not expect was that although Hong Yun said this sincerely, the old woman simply refused. The old woman shook her head with a touch of pain on her face, but she still said very seriously and frankly, High Priest Kabru, if your sentence was placed more than 200 years ago, it would still be valid, but now, we don't have that qualification anymore. We don't even have the qualification to call ourselves the High Priest of Kabru. Why? Hong Yun asked, very puzzled. No, why? This is a fact. The old woman sighed and said, at the beginning, our ancestor took the initiative to stay and care for the ancestral land. In order for the Iroquois to agree, there must not be many people left. Only about 150 people remained at that time. The Iroquois moved to many tribes outside our ancestral land. These tribes watched us and guarded the tribes. Our ancestors could only move in the small area of the ancestral land. Farming and hunting were very difficult. In many cases, it's not enough to eat. Summer is okay, but winter is the hardest to endure. If it weren't for these caves in the ancestral land, maybe we could not hold on for 2 years, and we would be affected by the cold winter wind. Kill. Shi Xiong sighed in his heart again. He knew that the old woman did not lie. If you want to survive here, you must harvest enough food in summer and autumn, including hunting enough prey, so that you can survive the cold winter. But the outside of the ancestral land was occupied by those Iroquois tribes. Large prey could not enter the ancestral land at all. How could it be possible for so many people to eat the small prey living in the forest of the ancestral land? Moreover, only one crop of food can be grown here a year, so the ancestors of these people must live in extremely hardship here. The old woman did not notice Shi Xiong's expression, but continued, if the cold and food shortage make our lives very difficult, but we can persist, then another incident will almost make us desperate, even giving up looking after the ancestral land. Because, after our ancestors decided to stay and protect the ancestral land, our ancestors have been living in this enclosed land, with little contact with the outside world. As a result, after a few generations, they guarded the fools and disabled children in the tribe. More and more, Many children even died of illness when they were young. Words immediately made Shi Xiong's eyebrows stand upside down, and he realized what the old woman said just now that almost made them despair or even give up. They have no reproductive isolation. Reproductive isolation can be said to be the most important thing in the biological world. Whether it is humans, animals or plants, if you want to continue life, you must carry out reproductive isolation, whether it is geographical isolation or ecological isolation or other means of isolation. Anyway, as long as you want the offspring to be well, reproductive isolation is a must. There may be many people who do not know the principles and methods of reproductive isolation, but everyone in later generations will understand one thing, that is, close relatives do not get married. To put it bluntly, this is the most direct method of reproductive isolation. Marriage between close relatives, children born to have a high probability of mental retardation, disability and other unpredictable congenital diseases, and such children generally live soon. Therefore, close relatives cannot get married. In addition, if certain species are not isolated, hybridization will occur, and the only consequence of hybridization is the inability to reproduce. Such as mules, such as ligers. Maybe these Indians don't understand the reason, but they definitely know it. However, the ancestors who guarded the tribe may have been patronizing the ancestral land, and ignored this arguably the most important thing. As a result, inbreeding will inevitably occur between them. It may not be obvious for one person or 2 generations, but after 3 or 4 generations, the consequences of intimacy will inevitably erupt on a large scale. There is something about fertility or blood continuity, which has always been the most important thing for mankind, and there is no one. But by the way, the ancestors of these people have forgotten about this. In other words, the Iroquois who are responsible for monitoring the guardian tribe want to completely exterminate this small guardian tribe through this method. If it is the former www.wuxiaspot.com, it is forgivable, but if it is the latter, it is simply too inhuman. Some of our ancestors immediately realized that something happened, but there were so many people guarding the tribe. But we can't help it, because those Iroquois stipulated that the guardian of the ancestral land should not exceed 100 people, 50 people, and there can be no strong men. Therefore, once the number of people guarding the tribe exceeds 150, or if there are men of adulthood, they will inevitably be taken away by those damned Iroquois. Only old people, women and children are left here. Under such circumstances, in order to prevent the inheritance of the guardian tribe from being cut off, in order to be able to continue to care for the ancestral land, we had to marry the Iroquois outside. In this way, more than 200 years have passed, and in our generation, the blood on the body is very mixed, let alone the high priest Cabru. Even if it is Cherokee, we probably don't have that qualification. Hong Yun then understood why the old woman said just now, so she was in terrible pain now. Shi Xiong suddenly stood up and said sternly, "Who said you are not Cherokee? Who dares to say that you are not from our tribe? I, the chief of the Cherokee tribe, declare here that you, and yours, descendants, forever and ever will be our Cherokee tribe for generations to come." Han Yun also stood up and said, "And me, the current high priest Kabul also announced that you and your descendants will always be members of the tribe. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574, Arrangement. Shi Xiong and Hong Yun's words, "Let these old and weak women and children salute again." For them, so many years of suffering have already burned them out of temper. Now the clan has suddenly come here, and it has completely conquered the Iroquois who have been torturing the tribe for years. There is no better news than this. Shi Xiong said loudly to these people in front of him, "I know that you have suffered over the years, and the suffering you have endured is not something ordinary people can bear, but you still clenched your teeth and persevered. Based on this, you are the heroes of the entire tribe." When Shi Xiong talked, These people listened quietly, cleverly, like a group of children facing the head teacher. Now, this suffering is over, it is over, and you will also begin to enjoy another kind of beautiful life. Here, I want to tell you that you will be sent to a place with beautiful mountains and rivers to recuperate, even though that place not as important as the ancestral land, but the conditions in all aspects are much stronger than the ancestral land. Moreover, there is the place where the high priest Kabru has always lived. As he said, Shi Xiong winked at Hong Yun, and Hong Yun immediately accepted the words knowingly. I don't care what your bloodline is. In my mind, you have always belonged to the high priest of Kabru, so you are fully qualified to go to the place where the high priest of Kabru has been living for hundreds of years to continue living. Hong Yun's words made these people's eyes light up. Hong Yun continued, we were driven out of here by the Iroquois and the Delawares, and then the tribe began to move south. Later, our tribe moved south to the south-central Appalachian Mountains. He established himself there and began to thrive in that area. However, our ancestor, a certain Kabru high priest, was dissatisfied with the chief's attitude towards Vasiku, so he took the initiative to resign from the tribal high priest. He took a part of his close tribe to continue south, and fell to his feet at the foot of a beautiful mountain, where it became the area where the high priest of Kabru lived. But now, because the royal court of our tribe has moved to its along the big river, so it's vacant. I don't think you are suitable to go to those places that are too prosperous, so I am going to let you live in the place where the high priest of Kabru lives. I don't know if you want it or not. These words immediately agitated these people who had always had no expressions, and the voice of discussion also rang. Neither the stone bear nor the red cloud urged them. They waited until their discussion gradually subsided. Then the old woman stood up with an excited look and asked respectfully, High Priest Kabru, can we live there? We really want to live there, but the blood in our body. Before the old woman finished her words, Hong Yun simply interrupted, Grandma, I am the current high priest of Kabru. There used to be the tribe where I lived. Whether you are qualified to go, it doesn't matter who you say. Use it only if I say it. Remember, no one in the entire tribe is more qualified to live there than you. So, what bloodline matters? What other messy things? Forget them all. Those things have passed. It has passed completely. You don't have to always be immersed in the mess. You should bravely raise your head and look forward. Don't forget, you are also in the line of the high priest of Kabru. And Hong Yun looked deeply at these people with expectant eyes, and said affectionately, furthermore, the Kabru high priest tribe also needs people to continue to guard. I ask you, you are protecting our tribe's ancestral land 300 years later. Are you willing to continue to protect the tribe of the Kabru high priest? As soon as Hong Yun's voice fell, almost all the people who guarded the tribe shouted yes. Even if their voices are not full of breath, even if they are crying and laughing, even if they still have a dishonest face, Shi Xiong is very pleased, because he sees something called hope and vitality returning to these things. Human body. Hong Yun was crying with a smile on his face. Kiao Lakrilu was also secretly wiping tears. As for Bakarzu, he kept coughing and laughing. The stone bear blinked his eyes severely and squeezed his nose. Then he turned his head and whispered to Kara Klilu, after I go back, I will arrange for someone to pick up the high tree tribe, and then put the most in the gyro bear army. The great guy transferred me to protect them. Well, there are also the best teachers, the best farming tools, and the most abundant supplies. All are anxious for them. As for the supply standard, follow the supply standard of the bear palace. Jorakrilu wiped his nose and said with a smile, Boss, if you don't tell me this, I will arrange it. Don't worry, they will be taken care of and protected in the best possible way. But this is the standard of supply. Is it too high? Not high, not high at all. They are the heroes of the tribe, the greatest heroes. We are expanding our territory outside, and they have used their loyalty to protect our ancestral land for 300 years. I think you should understand the meaning of this. Joe Lakrilu nodded deeply. Stone Bear is here to explain to Kiao Lakrilu how to arrange the people who guard the tribe, and Hong Yun helps Bakarzu to start chatting with these people. One is the high priest of the tribe, The other is the former high priest and now the great witch, Dr. www.wuxiasput.com. Those are the top big figures in the tribe, but the attitude of these two people is enough to be kind, so it didn't take long, they talked together. Bakalazu is so old that he is even more fond of some little guys. The dozen or so little hares are surrounded by Bakalazu, listening to this white-bearded grandfather telling them stories. While Hong Yun was surrounded by a group of women, Hong Yun was telling them about the Gaoshu tribe. When they heard that the Gaoshu tribe has endless land to plant, and they have made their own white salt as white as the white clouds in the sky. There are also magical machines that can grind corn kernels into powder without manpower, and they can also make delicious drinks. After the workshop that can squeeze oil, Minutes He has already traveled thousands of kilometers and flew to the tribe located at the foot of the Great Smoky Mountain. The violent bear army soon sent an entire battalion to the people who guarded the tribe. Of course, the people who guard the tribe will first return to the grizzly bear camp, where they will take care of their body for a month, and then after the temperature has completely risen, they will be escorted all the way south by these grim bear fighters to Pittsburgh, and then take a trip to Pittsburgh and then take a boat down the Ohio River, or go to Beijing to stay for a while, or directly transfer to the Tennessee River and go straight to the High Tree tribe. Everything depends on the choices of these guardians of the tribe. Hong Yun decided to stay with them all the time. Now Pittsburgh is under the jurisdiction of the British. At this critical moment, the British will never offend the Grim Bears, so it is absolutely no problem to use Pittsburgh. After arranging the matter of guarding the tribe, Stone Bear began to shift his energy to the Iroquois side. Chapter 575, Flowers are poor, flowers are poor. In fact, there is nothing serious about the Iroquois people now. The 6 chiefs of the Iroquois Alliance have been given a pot by the Stone Bears, and the main force of the Iroquois Alliance has been captured by the soldiers of the Violent Bears. The whole Iroquois, the Quebec League, is now not only a group of dragons without a leader, but also a mess. Actually, if it hadn't been for the sudden appearance of the Battle of the Ancestral Land, which disrupted the battle plan made by Stone Bear before, now the Iroquois had been completely taken down. But the plan really can't keep up with the changes, because Hong Yun and Bakaruzal recognized the Ancestral Land, and Shi Xiong, as the chief, could not recover the Ancestral Land. Therefore, the South Route Army and the North Route Army, which should have been advancing step by step, accelerated their marching speed. The tribes of the Iroquois Alliance that have been subdued have many slip-through fish. These tribes also need to be subdued one by one. But this is not a big deal anymore. Now Shi Xiong is most concerned about the Americans and the British. Because the representatives of the British and Americans are now squatting in the royal court of the Iroquois and refuse to leave. The Americans used to wear a pair of trousers with the British. The vast majority of Americans were originally British colonists, but the British king and the British government forced these colonists who were originally compatriots to oppose each other. In order to freedom, the original family has become a family, and now people's brains are also regarded as dogs' brains. This has to be said to be a great irony. No matter how ironic it is, it has nothing to do with Stone Bear and Cherokee. Now the Stone Bear is sitting on the mountain to watch the tiger fight, and finally a snipe and clam compete for the fisherman's profit. But the British and Americans don't think so. When they were a family before, a powerful Indian tribe stood on their side to fight against the French to the west of their lair. Therefore, when their internal strife broke out, both the British and Americans wanted to draw this Indian tribe who had previously supported them to their side. This Indian tribe is naturally the Iroquois Alliance that has been conquered by the Grim Bear Army. At this time, the British occupied Boston just lost last month, but the British occupied Montreal and Quebec, and opened the northern battlefield to the south. Although they lost Boston, the British can still land from New York, enter Montreal through the St. Lawrence River, and then head south. Once the British succeed in the north and south, the Americans will be completely at a disadvantage in the northern battlefield. The British and Americans are not fools. They all know that as long as they can draw the Iroquois to their side, they dare not say that it is of great significance to the overall situation. but at least they will definitely occupy a large part of the northern battlefield. Advantage. Therefore, the British and Americans are desperately trying to win over the Iroquois. The British are better off with wealth, while the Americans are squatters, and the relationship with the Iroquois is relatively strong. In fact, their lobbying and wooing still played a big role. The Iroquois, who originally wanted to remain neutral in this civil war, finally failed to withstand the lobbying and wooing of these politicians to form the Iroquois Alliance. The 6 tribes have now been divided into 2 camps. 4 tribes still stand on the side of the British, and the other 2 tribes have become the younger brothers of the Americans. If it hadn't been for the sudden arrival of the Grim Bear Army, perhaps the Iroquois Alliance, the once powerful Indian tribe alliance, would be the same as the original historical time and space, and its strength would be greatly reduced due to the division, and eventually it would be taken by the Americans in 3 years. The Founding Father commanded a raid into the hinterland of the Iroquois Alliance, burned a large number of Iroquois Alliance tribes, and finally completely dismantled the Iroquois Alliance. But now, because of the strong military pressure from the Grim Bear Army, the 6 major tribes of the Iroquois that were ready to part ways are united again to fight the Cherokee. But none of them would have thought that the strength of the Grim Bear Army was far more terrifying than the British and Americans. They only persisted for a few days before they were completely defeated. Now the Grim Bear generals are busy gathering the various tribes of the Iroquois Alliance, not in a hurry. After all, the civil war between you Britons is about us Cherokee. But the British and Americans can't stand it. Suddenly they lost such a powerful assistant as the Iroquois. This also has a great loss for them. So regardless of the British or Americans, they turned their attention to the more powerful Cherokee. The senior representatives sent by the British and Americans are now staying in the royal court of the Iroquois League, which is near Rochester, and insisting on interviews with the Cherokee Warchief. Both the British and Americans feel that they have maintained a very good relationship with the Cherokees over the years, so the representatives of both sides tried to get the Cherokees to join their side. They know very well that if the Iroquois joins one of them, it will play a good role in the northern battlefield. But if the Cherokees, who are so strong on each side, explicitly join one party www.wuxiasput.com, then this war will be over immediately. Because they understand very well, even if they stop fighting each other, and then join hands to deal with this powerful Indian tribe, they can be leveled with one hand. Especially after the Cherokee had just eliminated the Iroquois League with a stumbling stance. Whether it was American or British, the desire for Cherokee support became even more urgent. If Shi Xiong is not a traverser, then he might really join a party under their coaxing and lure. But it is a pity that Shi Xiong is an out-and-out traverser, and he is a soul-wearer, and his body is an Indian, so Stone Xiong has no affection for British or Americans. And Shi Xiong has planned for a full 10 years, waiting for you British and American brains to become dog brains before finally getting into trouble. Shi Xiong's plan is very simple. Don't you guys fight each other, that Lao Tzu is right behind you. Whoever falls into a disadvantaged position, Lao Tzu will give him a hand. The purpose is to make you fight more intensely, more bloodletting. It is better to kill the fish and break the net, so that it will be easier for Lao Tzu to regain the 13 colonies and Canada. But this plan Shi Xiong would not tell the representatives of the 2 parties, but Shi Xiong had to hang them, so Shi Xiong knew that he had to meet with the representatives of the 2 parties no matter what. After all, Shi Xiong not only wants to tell them where they stand, but also wants to take the opportunity to sell more things to make some money and spend money. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.